Alright guys, you know me, and you kind of know our fans a little bit, and I love finding new tips and tricks and good ways to roleplay and different opportunities. So we've all had goblins on the brain lately, and I'm wondering, when you come up with goblin NPCs and what have you, what is a fear or a weakness you would give that goblin to kind of help flesh it out? Me personally, I would love to see a goblin that just has like a fear of insects, like being outside, which I think would be a really funny thing to come across as a group of adventurers who come across a goblin in the forest who's just afraid of anything that moves. I think that would be freaking hilarious. Anyways, what do you guys think?
What fear or weakness to give a goblin NPC? Do we want to roll for this, Adam?
Sure, why not?
I got a natural 20.
Well, then it doesn't matter what the fuck I got, so.
So last week we mentioned briefly the Bulgons, and what are their names? The
Bulgons.
The weird
Dolgons?
Dolgons, that's the word.
And the Dolgrums?
Yeah. So we saw that there was that one like Dolgrim that had like the like 18 or the 8 arms and the 4 legs and the 2 faces and the mouths that are slapping together.
It's just 2 arms and 2 legs.
Sure. But
yeah.
2 sets of 2 arms and 2 legs.
Nope,
Anyways,
just 2 legs and 2 arms, but 2 faces.
No, they had 4 arms because they had like the crossbow. Yeah, they have multiple limbs. So I don't want to go quite that far with it, but having a goblin with like 1 leg too short or 1 arm that is just
so
obnoxiously,
it's a weakness.
Weakness. Like obnoxiously beefy arm. Like not like just something off. Not necessarily a fear or weakness, but something off. Right?
Yeah, I would just have one that does not speak Goblin.
Oh, yes. That's amazing.
Like a goblin that is legitimately terrified of other goblinoids in general. I don't want to be a part of the host. I don't speak Goblin. I denounce Goblin living. Has not listened to the last 3 episodes of this podcast is the point.
Okay.
It's a Mimic, the Roundtable Dungeons & Dragons discussion podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another episode in our conversation on mob mentalities, where we look at some of the militant humanoids out there that can make up the enemy armies in Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Dan, and with me today is Adam, and this episode is called Goblinoid Hosts, the Region's Legion Strategians.
Yeah, it took me a while to come up with that one.
I sometimes feel like you build these things just to make me mess up.
I often try, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyways, we've reached out to our army of friends and allies to help us break down what a Goblinoid host looks like in 5th edition. We've covered the stats and details last episode about the basic goblin, goblin boss, bugbear, bugbear chief, nilbogs, as well as all of the booyogs, and every other magic-y goblin. Yeah.
And hold on, what else? We hit the Barghest. We've done did we say Warg? Like, we've done a lot.
We've done a lot in the last couple episodes. But today we're covering all the different Hobgoblin entries that from the published 5e material. Well, it's finally time to talk about the biggest threat goblin kind has to offer. Specifically, hobgoblins. These are the...
Really? You think they're the biggest threat?
That hobgoblins have to offer. Oh, sorry, that goblinoid kind has to offer, yeah.
I don't know. Bugbears are just so much more chaotic and vicious and sneaky. Goblins, they just keep fucking banging out more baby goblins.
Yes, but goblins are cowardly and...
Not always. Yeah, we dispelled that.
We did that. And bugbears are lazy. Not always. Sometimes they're
just nocturnal. That's what I said, yeah.
There is an order to hobgoblins that makes them particularly
the organization.
Funny.
It's the difference between me and Dave. I'm hyper organized, and that makes me scarier than Dave. He owns guns and has a great big beard, but I have hidden his ammunition. So
yeah, with Dave, you know what to get. With something like a hobgoblin or you know that there's some unknown plot or
that there's a long-term
strategy going on. So, anyways, physically, hobgoblins have orange skin of varying tone. They stand about as tall as a normal human and weigh roughly the same. They look fairly standard size human. Like, if you caught a silhouette of a hobgoblin and a silhouette of a human, you'd probably not be able to tell the difference between
Except for the ears, maybe?
Except for the ears, maybe if you were close enough.
They almost have, like, their ears are big enough. They're not quite, but they're almost like Furbolg-ish ears. They're big.
Yeah. They also mature at the same rate as our baseline humans do. But where they differ from our baseline is their yellow to dark brown, dark vision granting eyes and wide, sharp-toothed maws reminiscent of our mischievous goblins when they finally glowed up. That's a thing, right, Adam? Glowing up?
I don't know what the fuck you mean by glowing up.
You should talk to me, Aka.
Sure, man. Is this a new fucking millennial thing?
I think it is. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, these hardy man-sized gobbies have only one other
what the
discernible.
fuck is wrong with you?
What?
Man-sized gobbies?
Yeah.
I got a man-sized gobby for you, Dan.
Anyways, these hardy man-sized gobbies have only one other discernible difference to their features.
Swing to the left.
No, different colors. No, in the nose region. The males tend to have either a blue or a red nose, which to hobgoblins everywhere is a sign of virility and status and will often flare in color during combat or any exertion, like when our cheeks get red after a run. Speaking of status, these goblins are the peak of goblinoid genetics. Hobgoblins rule over goblins and bugbears alike, and with a seemingly blessed gift from the gods, all goblins and bugbears will concede to this pecking order and fall in line to a Hobgoblin Warlord's directives and orders.
Will they fall in line to any hobgoblin or just a warlord?
It depends on the situation. Like, 4 bugbears and 1 hobgoblin, the bugbears might hesitate but be like, nah, man, you're just the 1 hobgoblin.
Okay,
but
so
10
like...
hobgoblins and 3 bugbears, the bugbears will probably fall in line.
So it's not like giants, where no matter what, you can have 1 frost giant running 1,000 hill giants, because might makes right. Bigger is better.
Yeah.
Right, in goblin or in giant society. But in goblinoid society, that's not quite it. There's some wiggle room. Rank does matter.
Yeah.
But numbers matter, and I guess ferocity matters. And
yeah. I mean, a lot of the goblins and bugbears are kind of like predisposed to joining a host. So when the third part of that trinity comes together in the hobgoblins, the utterings of a host being formed will probably draw the goblins and the bugbears in line. But if there's not enough hobgoblins to kind of really run it, probably not.
Well, remember, there's someone above the hobgoblins, and that's Maglubiot.
Yeah.
And you don't want to fuck with that guy.
Exactly. Maglubiot has seemed to have blessed these hobgoblins in some ways, though, because you see that they value discipline and martial prowess that their lesser cousins either don't have the time or the form to equally appreciate. So they just concede to the regimented hobgoblins. As for society of specifically hobgoblins, let's get into it. We'll talk specifically about how the host breaks down later. Right now, we're just talking hobgoblins.
Sure.
Okay?
Or hobblegobbles.
Hobgoblins, where did that come from?
Hobblegobbles?
Yeah.
That's me in our regular campaign.
Okay.
At one point, I want to say Terry called Goblin a gobble. And then I went, oh, well, then we have hobblegobbles too. And that just stuck in my brain. And so every time a hobgoblin NPC shows up, I say the word hobblegobble. That is entirely me. Yeah.
Yeah. It came up a couple times when we were playing, and I'm like,
is that a thing?
Well, I mean, I'm the guy who coined the Koboblin, right? Which was the
you have explained it 900 fucking times on the podcast.
It's a great weapon. What? Anyways, amongst hobgoblins, hobgoblins as a culture are divided into legions. Amongst hobgoblins, rank and status are earned through force. Such hobgoblins who earn these ranks run the operation of the legion. Every hobgoblin has a rank and a role in the legion, and should you step from your responsibilities, your reputation and honor can be stripped from you either by your rank or your head. Either or. Legions are divided up into family groups called banners. These banners are also ranked, so a soldier from a lower ranking banner will follow the orders of a soldier from a higher ranked banner. Banners and legions also vary in size and build, each falling into whatever their role is. If any rank or banner becomes troublesome or useless, a Hobgoblin Warlord will wipe it clean from the legion for maximum efficiency.
Holy shit. So they will just straight up knock out family trees.
Yes. Yeah. If they fail their mission,
Yikes.
They're gone. Now, should any legions come together, they will often fight each other to compete for status.
Is this like jousting, gladiatorial fighting, or are they like...
No. This is very hard and brutal, and like 2 legions will kill each other if they are certain this is not the formation of a host.
Okay, all right. So this is separate of a host. So what's a host? Oh, we'll get to it.
We will get to what a host is. Anyways, so this really pans out to the point where like a moot, like a meeting of the legions, is destined to descend into violence if a particularly strong warlord is not at hand to command them all. Should that be, though, the formation of legions is a truly terrifying army, especially considering the strategic geniuses that hobgoblins are. That genius goes beyond that of your baseline human. That is until an elf is seen, however. Then, that genius, the tactics, the strategy, all of that will go out the window, as all hobgoblins hate those evil pointy-eared assholes. Every breath of an elf is an affront to Maglubiet, and they will rush any elf to kill it first.
That's cool. So, when you've got a goblinoid host that is attacking, the bugbears don't have a straight up like enemy.
Yeah.
Goblins, though, will go after the cleric.
Yeah.
Or anybody that is praying or displaying an
It's
emblem for another god
in some way. Yeah.
And the hobgoblins are going to target the elf.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to just like fuck with your party.
Mm-hmm. Especially since elf cleric is a fairly common build.
Yeah, and normally you don't see a whole lot of elven barbarians, right? Like your elves are rangers and rogues; they stay to the back. The idea that they're going to get charged should scare the shit out of them.
There's this feel that elves are they're nimble, but they're not exactly hardy. They're kind of fragile.
That's one of the things that frustrates me about 5th edition, by the way, just sidebar totally. I believe that your hit dice should be based upon the race that you are in. Goliaths should have a D12 hit die. Halfling should have a D6. Hot take, that's just me, but I don't think it should be up to casters versus physical. I know why they did it for game design statistics, but I just don't think it makes any sense with the lore. The idea that there's a halfling barbarian that at level 2, so like early in the career, just can out fucking like constitution its way past a Goliath, wizard. Just it seems fucking stupid to me.
I completely agree with you. However, there is a fix for this, and it is found in Pathfinder 2.
So there's no fix for this, and we don't need to talk about it anymore.
We are just going to mention this real quick.
You may. I am zoning the fuck out. You wave your hands when it's time for me to come back.
Okay. Pathfinder 2 does have a system where hit points are generated from both the race and the class. However, Pathfinder removed a lot of the dice rolling and randomness to character creation, so it gives you a static, like a goblin will give you 6 total hit points, and then you'll get a barbarian, which will give you another 10 hit points on top of that, giving you a starting hit point of 16. And then from then on out, your class determines. If there's some way to homebrew that into a modern 5e game, then sure. I'd like to see that. I don't know exactly how that would work and still be balanced. But I agree with you. Having your race mean nothing to the amount of hit points, unless you're a hill dwarf, I think it is.
Mountain dwarf. Whatever one gives you +1 hit point per level. Yeah. That's the only one that does that. Yeah.
So
I just think with like the hollow bones of an Aarakocra, you should be squishy.
Yeah, I completely agree.
A Locatha barbarian should not be able to take more damage than a fucking orc ranger.
No, I agree. Back to hobgoblins.
Right.
Okay?
Hobgoblins.
Specifically the legions. Legions, it may really sound like legions are going to be in constant war. They're really not. Although that is their main goal, sometimes a legion has to plan, build, and prep. This leads to things like a passion for animal husbandry, for example. Not that kind of husbandry. Hobgoblins will domesticate oxen and horses
Put
as
lipstick
pack
on them
animals,
and shit too.
or they will domesticate wargs and horses as war mounts. Either way, they will also train ravens for carrying letters and will gather various other beasts to loose during battles, like attack dogs, hydras, or carnivorous apes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, all of these are mentioned specifically. It also says that sometimes there are sects of hobgoblin. Sects. I can't hit that. No. There are groups of hobgoblins. There are banners of hobgoblins that will ride carnivorous apes as mounts into battle.
Not even touching it.
Yeah.
I'm not even, let me go ride my husbandry ape.
A legion on the move, however, will raid and target areas of strategic wealth, whether through resources or whether they're positioned well. They will then set up battlements and strongholds to then expand their conquest forth. But they're smart. They will recon nearby targets before gathering the legion and attacking. If their target is another stronghold, for example, they will properly siege it, cutting off supply lines and escape routes because a starved enemy is easier to kill than a hardy, well-fed one. If the defenses of a looted stronghold are good, they will then be approved upon with some of the most vicious war machines and defensive measures. It is important to realize that a hobgoblin's life revolves around the concept of war. They are inspired by the romantic visions of war and nonplussed by the horrors of it.
So
A hobgoblin, horrors.
There's
Horrors.
Second
Horrors.
syllable, horror.
Yeah. A hobgoblin will never run from battle because they believe the axe in life will translate to their death, and a coward has no place in the great eternal war.
Now, do you think that that's just indoctrination from Maglubiot? Or is that just like ingrained in
I think it's
Hobgoblin
ingrained in their culture.
Okay.
We'll talk about hobgoblins as player characters later, but some of the things they get really lean towards this heavy martial bravery focus.
Yep,
right?
okay.
But you mentioned Maglubiot, and it's kind of in this aspect you do see that hobgoblins are nearly fanatical worshippers of specifically Maglubiot.
Now, they've still got a couple of gods that are still alive.
They do, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But those gods specifically are like generals of Maglubiot and point the hobgoblins toward. They are definite seconds to Maglubiot. Yeah.
So, it's interesting to me that the goblins who run in fear of Maglubiot got one god plus the Nilbog, right? But just the one who enslaves.
Yeah.
The bugbears who, have to be kind of whipped into shape and whatnot, they still have two gods that are alive. But the hobgoblins who are just like fanatical, like Maglubiot followers, they promote him all the time, they actually kept a few of their pantheon. You can tell that Maglubiot favors them and favors strength and brutality and I'm not going to say cruelty necessarily, but a lack of compassion, let's say.
Yeah. Well, you really see that hobgoblins they're a conquesting horde.
So with a D?
They're not, yes, that's with a D.
I bet it is.
They're not necessarily there to terrorize a realm. Like, they don't burn down the villages after they raid them. They keep them up and keep the people inside.
They're there to be rulers.
Yeah, right. It's the act of war. A hobgoblin isn't there to destroy a village that poses no challenge to them.
Unless it is on the march, or it's
unless
part
it's
of the
on
strategy.
the march, or it's got some sort of strategic value. But if there's a little podunk, mean nothing village a day's ride out of the way that has no strategic value, no resource value, they're just going to walk by it.
I also feel like if there's a small fledgling village with 6 houses and, a grain silo in the middle of farmland and whatnot, but there's one main road that comes down between them all, and it's almost like an extended family farmstead.
Yeah.
The Hobgoblin army would walk down the road through and just bypass this. If there's nothing there to look at, it's just more background scenery. Whereas the bugbears would be like, fuck, I'm just going to go murder a cow and eat those 3 chickens. And then goblins are like, shiny?
Yeah. Shiny, and can I kidnap you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to be that way with hobgoblins.
So are hobgoblins slavers then?
Yes and no. I think goblins kind of have this focus on slavery that Kagorbayog gives them. There's none of that really with hobgoblins, right? They do it because it's still kind of part of goblinoid culture.
They don't need to. They have goblins.
And that specifically is when the host forms, they task goblins with managing slaves.
Sure, okay.
Right?
So goblins like the bottom bitch.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyways, hobgoblins from birth are trained in the art of war. They hold and record tomes of history to learn tactics and strategies to inform their conquest for their mighty god. So they read, rear animals, and have a semi-permanent strongholds. You could be fooled into thinking that hobgoblins are just as civilized as any other medium humanoid culture, but there is a hard savagery that does underline them. Any criminals are put to death with harsh and swift and no mercy. The smallest offense being rewarded with death at an executioner's block. There is no beauty as we know it in Hobgoblin life. Art, music, if they do not glorify war or serve a practical purpose, they are seen as frivolous and useless. There is often a very feudal Japan feel to put on Hobgoblins, but I also feel like ancient Sparta lines up well with them as well.
The only reason that I get a feudal Japan thing is, first of all, they talk about honor, but
a lot of their art leads.
Yeah, their art really gives us a samurai kind of view.
Yep.
Except for one of them, which looks like a ninja, right? So that's kind of where you draw those lines. I've got a lot of them have like the samurai knot on top of their head, like the top knot. Like you do get those flavorings through the art, but you don't necessarily see that, with the exception of the word honor, anywhere in this breakdown. They feel more like Roman legions.
They do feel like Roman legions in that respect, right? But in Rome, we saw that there was this heavy focus on philosophy and stuff. Unless it has to do directly with war or battle.
Yeah, they just don't give a shit.
They don't give a shit.
Your bard is not going to talk you out of this one.
Yeah, pretty much. Back to Maglubiet, who slew all but 2 of the Hobgoblin gods so long ago that even Hobgoblin legend lore has forgotten their names. The only 2 that exist are Nomagea, who is a stoic and merciless tyrant under that many Hobgoblins will worship under Maglubiet. There's also Bargivrek.
Close.
Bargrivyek.
Better.
Okay. Bargivyek. No.
Nope. Bargrivyek.
Yeah. Barv.
Nope.
No. Barg?
Barg.
Okay. Barg, whose portfolio...
Barg has bite.
Yeah. Whose portfolio involves discipline, duty, and order. Their relationship between these 2 are if we had Terry and Brad helming a series together. Not each other's first choice, but they will work with what they got.
I don't know who I pity in that.
Yeah,
I
want to watch that show.
Yeah, I think Terry's going to be shocked at just, like, he's not the most perverted person in that duo.
Yeah.
And he like, his jaw will hit the floor and then Brad will take use of that.
A lot of the other gods in the Goblinoid pantheon have been crushed under the iron fist of Maglubiet. But the Hobgoblin pair are far more free to influence the Hobgoblins as the Hobgoblin way of life pleases the warlike Maglubiet.
Maglubiet.
I said it right that time.
Maglubiet is glue in it.
Maglubiet.
You spelled it wrong in your notes, Dan. It's Maglubiet.
The L's before the U?
Yes.
Dang it. All right. So when you get into these 2 gods, you will also see that no temple is constructed for these 2. They get nothing more than shrines and prayers around a dinner table of roast boar, porridge, and milk. That said, priests of Nomagea, those who school and train the young and old Hobgoblins in war and strategy, will always wield his 2 favored weapons, a longsword and a hand axe, into battle. Whereas priests of Bargrivyek, are the police force of the Hobgoblin Legion, who wield deadly flails with heads dipped in white paint.
It is bullshit that we did not get stat blocks for these guys.
It really is. They're badass.
There are a lot of Hobgoblins that are mentioned in passing without any real idea of how they function on a battlefield.
Yeah, we don't have any of these, like, veterans of Nomagea or these priests of Bargrivyek.
Yeah.
Right? I'd like to see something, because, like, this idea of them swinging around this dire flail with the white head, like, that's a terrifying image.
Oh, I will show you that right now, Dan.
Not that terrifying flail with a white head that I need to know.
It's not perfectly white, but, you know.
I mean, see a doctor if it's not white.
It can be eventually.
No. Now, Hobgoblin lairs are more akin to cities than caves or the wandering tribes we've seen.
Layers. I thought you meant, like, people that lay things.
They will set root... God damn it, Adam. I've been trying my hardest to soldier on through this.
I know. I'm sorry. Tell me more about how they set root.
They will set root somewhere with good resources and good land to farm. They require access to plenty of... I'm reading my thing and I'm just going, Adam's going to mess with this.
Yep.
They require access to plenty of wood, stone, and metal. Mm-hmm. If they find such a place, they will build permanent walls, forges, training yards, mills, you name it. With such permanent settlements, of course, you would come up with the idea of, can you trade with a Hobgoblin? Mm-hmm. If they are not actively raiding, i.e. they are running recon right now, so aren't actively building the Legion to go into war.
I assume that it's like a sports team. You have rebuild phases, right?
Yeah, right.
Like you did your thing. You were a host. Everything went really well. The host is now broken, and you've retreated back into your own lands. You're in a rebuild phase, waiting to get called up again.
Yeah.
So they've got to just run a society, right? You know that these guys are going to be more organized. Just exactly what you're saying. Yeah. They've got some permanency to where they want to be.
But a Hobgoblin Warlord will never want you within his walls. So what they'll do is they'll set up a trading post just outside of the walls so that, you know, the Hobgoblins manning it are protected by the walls.
That's just good strategy.
Yeah. But you can more than come there and trade for goods and coin.
Welcome to Hobgoblins, Little Baubles.
So this walled settlement that a Hobgoblin has is more built like a military base as you would expect.
Yeah.
Function over form everywhere with plenty of space for drills, weapons training, and animal husbandry.
You already said drills.
It is always exceptionally guarded with full regiments of troops walking the walls, scouting, running perimeters, and patrolling the grounds. The only structure not directly used in their utilitarian way of life practices are statues that venerate past war heroes and veterans.
Well, I mean, if it's all about honor, there has to be a long-term goal behind that, right?
Yeah. Every legion is going to have a headquarters, which is likely to be the most decorated building in the camp, with the banners of every banner house along the walls. This is where the warlord will meet with his generals, captains, banner leaders, etc., to discuss conquest and the day-to-day operation of the stronghold. To get to this headquarters will also be a path called the Way of Glory, which is where these honorable dead are interred, with each burial plot displaying banners, status, and accomplishments of the dead warrior.
So, because they are a semi-mobile moving army, they don't take their dead with them. The dead stay back home in Hobgoblin territory.
They are a moving army, but they very much have this base of operations that they will return to in a settlement.
Okay.
Or in a stronghold. So, no, these guys won't come with them, but they will return to them.
I'm trying to picture, you're not going to get 12 little goblins with a sarcophagus above their head running down the road after the Hobgoblins.
Only if the Hobgoblins are returning from a battle.
Oh, and they just fell.
And they just fell in the previous battle on Arcana.
All right.
So, yeah, I could see that. I just imagine like 6 goblins losing their way with this thing, and you as a party like stumble upon 6 goblin pariahs carrying like the golden sarcophagus of a warlord that has fallen, and they're like, we have no idea where we are. And
can you please point us towards the nearest Hobgoblins?
Yeah, right. Anyway, so some legions may also build libraries and schools, but the subjects will always be related to war and the arcane arts. So now that we know more about Hobgoblin life and society, what happens when the Hobgoblin legions, bugbear gangs, and goblin tribes all come to form a Goblinoid host? We're finally going to talk about hosts now. Well, for one, the Hobgoblins are in charge. If there are multiple legions that have found their way into the host, the different legions form up like banners of the new host, each having different status to the new host warlord. The animosity found between legions, like we said earlier, a lot of legions will fight even to the death, is put aside when a host is formed. However, it's not forgotten. That's important. The blind religious fanaticism of Hobgoblins taking precedence over a legion's pride, but any slights from one legion to another are recorded and saved.
All right, hold on. I gotta pause you. We keep banging the drum that these guys are hyper-religious. There's nothing in any of the stat blocks about that. Would you have Hobgoblins, pray every day at dawn, or they've got a Sabbath day, or they've got, could your party take advantage of ritualistic prayer or...
I think they are religious like the Roman legions were religious. So there is ritual that is part of their day-to-day life, probably influences their military upbringing and practices and drills, but there is a religious undertone to it.
There's a little uttering of a prayer as you put on your armor.
Yeah.
But right? You're not necessarily going to church for an hour.
Or you take extreme care of your arms and armor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are making sure that your sword is always polished. Your leather armor is always oiled, right? Like,
these guys are going to have, Maglubia tattooed on their freaking, bicep, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's
They're religious, like, cultural Catholicism level stuff, right? Like, they're the daily rituals of life that influence their entire way of life that are just part of the system, right?
but they don't
There's
necessarily have that one day off to.
No, I don't think.
That they're warfaring. They don't have time for that shit.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So when we see this, we see that any of these slights that these legions have against each other during the host, like they could come up during the host, they could come up from before when the host was formed. They're put aside for later. When the host dissolves or breaks, these issues will be then handled, right? It's one of those.
You got to wait for your court date.
Yeah, right. And that the court date's when when the conquesting is done, when the host is over, you will get yours. But until then, we will fight side by side.
I absolutely love. It's like, okay, guys, we're done. Everybody, turn around, go home. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Can I please see Steven and Bradley in back behind the house so we can finally settle that thing?
And I think it would happen minus the voice. Basically, exactly like
probably
that.
minus Steven and Bradley as well.
Is Brad a hobgoblin?
Brad is not a hobgoblin, not by a damn sight.
No. Anyways,
Brad is a nilbog.
Very much so. Anyways, bugbears in the host are the special forces. Okay. Now,
we talked about this. I think Jeff talked about this.
I admit it's here that we really see what you have said about bugbears being nocturnal. After doing my research for this episode, I'm definitely more in that camp now.
It's not canon, but fuck does it make sense.
It really makes sense because they function as spies and assassins. They answer only to the senior leadership within the host. They can, if each gang shows special aptitude for something, be formed into formal bulwarks, thugs, or murderers.
Yeah, and like I say, go back and listen to episode 103 because Jeff really jumps into that details.
Yeah, he does.
Actually, he gave us stat blocks too that you can find on the subreddit.
Yeah,
for each one of these, he built his own homebrew stat
and
blocks.
they're fantastic.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
He did his homework.
Just briefly, thugs are the bugbears who leap into crowds to break up formations. Bulwarks are the tip of the spear, charging in with spiked shields to force more openings in other forces. And murderers are those stealthy, silent killers sent to recon and spy or murder sentries in the dark of night.
What's interesting to me is that we've kind of doubled up on that. We have these non-statted up bugbear assassins, but later in this episode we're going to get into the hobgoblin assassins.
Yeah. Now, goblins in the host are a different matter from the bugbears. When a tribe of goblins joins a host, they know their job is foot soldier.
They're not they're not officers, they're enlisted men.
Exactly. Every goblin, whether they are gatherers or pariahs, has his caste raised to being a hunter.
Uh-oh.
Which is particularly funny because a lot of pariahs don't know how to use weapons, but now because they're in a host, they have to pick one up.
Right, but one of the other things that we talked about in the last episode was that there are some booyah casters that will learn spells by looking over someone's shoulder, right? Which I would assume would be a hobgoblin caster, right?
Yep.
That they're getting trained under. I think that as a goblin becomes a veteran of more and more gatherings of the host, they would be raised in rank up to hunter and lasher because they're only missing the training.
Well, I would say they wouldn't even be lifted up to lashers because lashers is a tribal-only rank. So they...
No, but I mean, when the host dissolves and they go back, you could have started off a pariah, done so well at war that you come back.
Yes, I catch what you're saying. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. A lot of the lashers who come in will still be kind of in charge of the the Goblin tribe, but that is mainly they are the talking point.
They're the middlemen. They're
the middleman between the hobgoblins and the rest of the goblins.
Yeah.
Okay. The lazy, brutish, pothead bugbear or incompetent, uncoordinated, ill-fitted armored hobgoblin has dominion over the biggest goblin chief.
Oh, yeah. Low end of the totem pole.
Yeah.
The biggest goblin is still lower than
still lower than the lowest bugbear.
Yeah.
Right? Goblins aren't dumb to this fact and lose all of their humor and mischief in resignation that they are the front line and thus may soon be drafted into Maglubiet's war.
Yeah.
Yay, I said it right.
Yes, you said it right.
They are the fodder of the host. They manage the slaves, the animals, or perform as sappers. which I imagine is just a goblin strung up with some hobgoblin explosives and sent running at a wall Helm's Deep style.
I mean, maybe. When I think of sappers, I don't know what that means, so I thought that's sapping, and I'm just sitting there. Is that like a fluffer for the Goblinoid Host?
No.
No?
No, not
They're
quite.
like, oh no, I got a sap now.
No. After the goblins, the only other additions to the host are literally anything else. Wolves,
That's good.
wargs,
Yeah. Way to narrow it
ravens, ogres. An example of a tamed hydra with goblins riding each head that direct the beast by controlling the view of its blinkered eyes is in Volos. I'm also a fan
I mean, there's not a stat block for it, but it's mentioned.
It's mentioned. I'm also a fan of the Carrion Crawler ridden by goblins in a row led by a lantern on a stick.
You can get kind of fun and interesting with these.
Yeah.
I'm going to say now, if it is more powerful than a hobgoblin or one of the booyah casters or whatnot, there has to be a fucking good reason for it to be a part of this.
Yes.
Right? You are not going to have a hag or a lich subjugated by the Goblinoid Host.
No. You might have a hag
Working as an advisor because they've got other goals.
Yeah.
But they're not subjugated.
They're not subjugated. Exactly. Now, a host is a heaving, dirty wave of death rolling over the land to bring more and more glory to Maglubiet. They travel mainly at night, preceded by outriders with raven messengers to direct the flow of the tide. They also travel mainly by foot, but some wolf-bound goblins or warg-bound hobgoblins will form a cavalry that will also be there. However, the book does mention that hobgoblins of high rank may have more unique mounts, like a hippogriff or axebeaks or giant vultures.
That's badass.
Yeah.
I like that.
You'll note that bugbears aren't listed with mounts, and that's mostly because they don't ride them typically. The closest they will do is ride in the howdah of an elephant or hydra or other enormous beast with a crew of their bros, reserving their energy for the battle ahead, dude.
They are kind of bros, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, bugbears are kind of frat boys.
Yeah, I'm getting more and more like they're just nocturnal frat boys.
Yeah, they just party all night.
But they're like that bad frat where if you piss them off, they will murder you and bury you in the woods somewhere.
They're like a 1980s fucking bad movie frat.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Where the nerds are the protagonist. They're like the frats in Revenge of the Nerds.
I have trouble referencing Revenge of the Nerds with any sort of happiness whatsoever. There's a creepy amount of sexual assault that's supposed to be jokes.
There really is.
Yeah. So that is one of the franchises that I'm glad has just died off. Also, nerds run the world now, so what are we getting revenge for?
Being awesome?
We don't need revenge for that, Dan. We just do it naturally.
I guess that's true. Anyways, when a host stops, it is for rest, but not for recreation. A war camp is erected as a place for the whole host to be based from before they move on. If not just reusing a war camp from a previous host or the ruins of a conquered fort, the Hobgoblin Warlord will make slaves, goblins, beasts, whatever, dig a massive trench in a circle, only interrupted by paths for gates in and out of the camp. This circular form will be how the camps are almost always built, because inside this ring, palisades, gates, and towers form a protective ring around the camp. Inside these walls and gates, the camp is split, much like a hobgoblin stronghold would be. A central command center is built in the middle of the camp, functioning as the headquarters mentioned earlier. Elite bugbear bodyguards stand post at the entrance to this building, and a goblin jester is almost always employed to avoid the appearance of a nilbog.
Yeah.
If a camp has no rookery or library, these functions can be found at the command center. As for the feet on the ground, you will have barracks erected for hobgoblins, dens for bugbears, and hovels for goblins. Barracks will be the most spacious and well-appointed in the war camp, with each banner of each legion typically taking the duty of constructing their own lodges. Bugbear dens will be scattered throughout the entire camp, basically wherever a group of bugbears deems a good place to dig a ditch and settle in. Goblin hovels, on the other hand, are placed where the hobgoblins tell them to place them. It's often kept by where the slaves and animals are, in a roundish tent, so that the goblins can always keep an eye on the slaves and animals.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay? Also present in the camp, if it does have one, will be this library, if the camp is big enough, which will be the collected tomes of the area they are conquesting through to understand the history, while also giving the hobgoblin mages somewhere to work. Several pens and pits will also be set up to store the slaves and beasts of the host, and are kept under the watchful eye of the goblin hovels. Members of the war camp are expected to maintain and care for themselves mainly, but supply wagons equipped with tools, replacement gear, and other non-perishables are strewn throughout the camp as well. Finally, and maybe most importantly, each camp will have a block, or rather the block. The block is the Executioner's block, where worship to Maglubiet, whose favored weapon is specifically an Executioner's axe, takes place. This is often raised up in a wide courtyard and is never cleaned of the blood. Those who worship forbidden gods or are caught breaking the rules of the host or are shirking in their duties will serve as sacrifices to the Goblinoid god on this block. Near the block will be an ascending weapon stand displaying the favored weapons of the various Goblinoid gods still alive, but Maglubiet's axe is always on top. Below come Nomagea's longsword and hand axe, Bargriviek's white-headed flail, the red-yellow whip of Kurgorbayag. The bugbear deities have no weapons on these walls, but instead will have a litany of heads on pikes, with eyelids removed and mouths open. So what is the goal of a host? Well, the gaining of territory. Conquest, pure and simple. This isn't the raiding of orcs or the skirmishes of a broken-up host. This is the directed gathering of land and slaves for the glory of Maglubiet. They hold no interest in wanton slaughter, unless they come to elves, that is, so as to retain the population to subjugate and generate more resources for the host. Those who do put up any resistance are swiftly dealt with, however, and if a host can string together victories and claim enough land, they can often become a nation to themselves, an empire led by goblin interests. But it will only last as long as the victories do. If life stagnates and the conquesting stops, a host will disintegrate into its pieces, and all will go their own ways until the next host forms. They will also let some of those aforementioned offended legions finally exact justice on the offending legions. It'll let the goblins go back to base natures, causing mischief and shirking duties until the tribe is chased out. And also, if they think they could get away with it, in a fraction host, a bugbear gang will take a few heads and make their leave.
I imagine that if the hobgoblins left before the bugbears did, any goblins left behind are in for a bad time.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. I mentioned that slaughter isn't necessarily the goal of the host.
It's pronounced slafter.
It's not. This is true because the hobgoblins know that the established communities have established methods, and so long as those communities don't go against the hobgoblin warlogs.
Warlogs. I got a warlog.
So as long as those communities don't go against the warlord's strict rules, those communities are permitted to continue their methods. A host could even come to respect some of those traditions and laws in a conquered land if they aid in the pacifying of the masses under their control. Enterprising and ambitious people in the subjugated masses may even gain power and standing gifted by the Hobgoblin Warlord for aiding the host in its goals, often at the cost of favor with their own people. Where this line is drawn, though, is religion. Any representatives or buildings of gods not deemed harmless, like a fertility or harvest god, are put down and the structures are re-engineered to venerate Maglubiet over the defeated deities. Any representation of a conqueror god is destroyed and shrines to the mighty one are erected in their place. Now that we're done discussing these brutal leaders of the Goblinoid host, let's move on to the breakdowns from the folks out in the field. If you want any more information, be sure to check out the previous Mob Mentality episodes, as well as the first one we did months and months and months ago, episode 22, Goblinoids, Foes or Fools. But for now, this commercial. Hello, lovely listeners.
Or as I like to call you all, my NPCs.
Damn it, we're recording a commercial.
Right.
For those of you who aren't aware, we're currently in the middle of a massive project called The Many Roads to Amelia, where we're continuing our Call of Cthulhu series. Adam has been working tirelessly with a number of people to bring different kind of actual play to you guys.
Or NPCs.
Stop that.
Oh.
As I was saying, from October 2020 to October 2021,
That's 13 months.
On the 13th of each month, we'll be releasing a single episode of our homebrew saga that lays the groundwork for our next miniseries. Adam has taken over as the keeper of arcane secrets, allowing me to join all the other players on this bizarre and horrifying ride that Adam's twisted mind has come up with.
But here's the fun part. Each of these episodes is a one-shot with only a single player. I've massaged the rules to make it a little deadlier and secretly worked with each player to craft each separate story to be radically different in plot, theme, pace, and tone. That means that the players have no idea what the others are up to or what parts of the clues or overarching story the others may know.
We're not even allowed to listen to the episodes as they get released, so we'll be going into the next miniseries completely blind.
This is exciting because it gives us the unique opportunity for attentive listeners like yourselves to actually know more about what's going on than the players do. That means that you can sit by and listen to all the voices from the Deep Dark of Radiance return, mostly with new characters, and you might be able to put the pieces together in ways that the players won't.
Also, there's the threat that if our character dies or goes insane in our one-shot, we won't be invited back for the next series. That's keeping us paranoid, curious,
And sometimes reckless.
and desperate.
So, tune in every month to listen to me and either Dan, Terry, Dave, Megan, or Mieka
Or Brad, or the 5 new voices.
as we whittle down the list of survivors and take a look at what mysteries and horrors are slowly unfolding in Northern Canada, Southern America, and subterranean Egypt. There are many roads to Amelia, and you are invited to walk them all with me over the next year. Just check the It's a Mimic feed on your favorite podcast provider for a new episode on the night of the 13th each month.
Until then, let's jump back into the episode. So, can you give me a hint because I'm recording this commercial with you?
Yes, I could, but I won't.
I hate you.
I know.
Welcome back. Now, remember, we're talking about hobgoblins here, so as many of you may have figured, they're all going to be medium humanoids. Also, while goblins are neutral evil and bugbears are chaotic evil, hobgoblins are, drumroll, lawful evil.
I mean, according to their stats, right?
Yeah.
They can be whatever when it comes to, the player characters or, special NPC, whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, our first guest here is going to be Dave, and he's managed to dig up a lot more information on the average hobgoblin.
Hey guys, Dave here. I'm coming at you again from Eberron. I am continuing my quest to learn more about the Draconic Prophecy, and I'm actually en route to another location. I can't really talk about it right now, but where I am and where I'm going, okay? But we'll get to it later. Anyways, in my travels, I've come across some interesting things about hobgoblins that I didn't know. Now, for instance, there's these kinds of hobgoblins called the Bloody Blue Noses, okay? These are hobgoblins that are born with red or blue noses. They are thought to be a sign of superiority, and these hobgoblins often become leaders in the ranks. Now, the noses can also, maybe blushes, I'm not sure that's the right word, but, they change color when experiencing extreme emotion. Blush. Let's go with blush. Now, the other kind of hobgoblin that I thought was really interesting was the warborn. Now, in hobgoblin society, it's frowned upon procreating while out warring, okay? So the idea is that they save their effort and energy for battle. And in fact, if they break this rule, they can be executed for it. Now, sometimes when the female hobgoblins join an army, they are already pregnant, and when they are out roaming, not necessarily in the heat of battle, but when they're away and fighting, when they're warring, they give birth to a child, and this child is known as a warborn. These kids are used as symbols to rally the troops. They're just very symbolic for the warrior culture that is hobgoblins. Now, a regular old hobgoblin is actually not that difficult. They're half CR, but their armor class is 18, which can be pretty intimidating and hard for a small first or second level party to get past. However, they do only have 2d8 plus 2 hit points. Their strength, dex, and con are all a little above average, where intelligence, wisdom, and charisma is all about average, if not just a little bit under. Hobgoblins do get dark vision up to 60 feet, and they speak common and goblin. Now, they get an ability called Martial Advantage, where once per turn, they can do an extra 2d6 damage to a creature that it hits. It can do an extra 2d6 once per turn. It can deal an extra 2d6 damage to a creature it hits with a weapon attack if that creature is within 5 feet of an ally of the hobgoblin. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Other than that, they get a longsword and a longbow. Nothing too fancy. One of the interesting things about hobgoblin culture is their use of a rookery. Now, a rookery is a place where you keep ravens and other birds, but specifically for the hobgoblins' ravens. that would be used as messengers or spies, okay? Most hobgoblin camps have a large structure in them that have multiple perches for the ravens to roost or nest in. Think of it as like, I don't know, a giant post with a bunch of bird feeders on it, essentially, but very rudimentary and not symmetrical and, hobgoblin-y. Now, not all of them have this big, large structure in their camp. What some of them will do is have these places for the ravens to roost built into the side of buildings and so on. And when they're out and roaming, they do have a Rookery wagon, which keeps all of the ravens together for when they need them. Now, a raven is a pretty basic creature. They're a CR0. Their AC is 12. They have 1d4 minus 1 hit points. Their speed is 10 feet, but they fly at 50. Their strength, con, intelligence, and charisma are all very much below average, where their dexterity and wisdom are above average. They get a perception skill and a mimicry ability, so it can mimic simple sounds it has heard. Nothing too complex, just, again, simple. And they get a beak attack, which does like 1 damage, so it's pretty uninspiring. These are more meant to be flavor for when your party's, I'm out in the woods, what do I see? Well, you see ravens circling ahead. Maybe that's a good clue for them to understand that there are hobgoblins nearby. But I mean, most of the parties I deal with as a DM are stupid and would just think that, oh, gee, there's birds. Let me tell you, if I'm a DM and I'm describing something, it's probably not just for flavor. I like to use these opportunities to present purpose and more background to it. That way I can explain things away later. Oh, well, how did they know we were doing this? Well, because of this. And it allows them to think a little more critically in the future, which, let's be honest, is a skill that a lot of people could use, not just inside D&D. So, I'm trying, guys. Now, for the hobgoblins, I like the idea of the blue nose. Now, up in Canada, we have a province called Nova Scotia, and people there are called blue nosers. Alright, it's named after a ship. That's a long story, it doesn't really matter, but I think it's interesting. This appeals to me. So I would probably use a blue nose, or a bloody blue nose, as it is in the book, as a creature that, maybe give it I would use the bloody blue nose as an antagonist. These guys are looking for the goblin with the blue nose, or the goblin with the red nose, or maybe it's a regular color, but when he gets worked up it starts to glow blue, so they've got to find these goblins and elicit emotion from it. So they have to find these hobgoblins and elicit emotion from it in order to figure out who it is and what it's doing. So I think there's a lot of stuff you could do with this. And so I just think the potential with these different kinds of hobgoblins in and amongst hobgoblin society is an interesting take on their particular usefulness in that society. That's a stupid sentence that makes very little sense. The idea of having the flesh change color is a unique ability that you don't often see in a lot of creatures, and it's something that I would definitely play with if given the opportunity to here with hobgoblins. Anyways, guys, I think I'm getting close to my destination, so I gotta go. I will catch you guys next time. Anyways, Adam, Dan, back to you.
So, Adam, why do you think rookeries and ravens were included with hobgoblins specifically? Do you like ravens as spies, especially with no language?
I don't know. I've got an issue with this. I really do. I do not like ravens as spies. It's a very Lord of the Rings bullshit thing to me.
It very much is, yeah.
And there's no fucking legitimate reason for it, right? You can have a raven that's a familiar that you can communicate with psychically. They can do a little bit of mimicry.
Yeah.
But they really are not going to be able to tell you where, like, troop movements are. They are going to be able to hover above. But I guess you're watching raven formations. But how good are these hobgoblins at training ravens?
I think exceptionally good.
Right, but how smart is a raven? Not that smart. Not smart enough to be able to have 12 or 14. They're not going to all, like, hover in the form of a left-pointing arrow, right? They're not like that.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, they will be smart enough to fly in a circle over a threat or something like that, right?
If you see more than 100 people moving at once, you fly in a circle, sure, but I bet they only have 4 or 5 different commands like that.
I agree. I think they also function very heavily as messengers, right? And that's the tie the thing to the leg and send it, and they will be able to find their way back home, right?
It's
like,
weird that Goblins
Ravens
got this, but nobody else did. You'd think that there would be other creatures that would...
Well, it's because other creatures use things like messenger pigeons if they're going to use something like that, right? I mean, a lot of the other mobs that we're going to be coming across here either have very traditional forms of written message or magical message.
Yeah, I'm talking about the intelligent playable races, right? Like, why are gnomes not using ravens? Why are Goliaths not using... I keep bringing up Goliaths. I apparently have Goliaths on the brain today.
I honestly, I think Goliaths would use ravens. I don't think...
It's just
weird because
that
Hobgoblins have them doesn't omit their use with other races.
That's kind of where I was going with this. It's weird that Hobgoblins focused so much on the Rookeries.
Yeah.
In the lore. But I guess that's just because they have such a massive legion that they need to be able to communicate long distances. They don't have access to a whole lot of non-combat like spells and magics and whatnot. So I guess when you start to sit there and say, how do they function as a legion? When you reverse engineer, you start asking questions. Oh, ravens. And so they got an entry in here. It just felt weirdly out of place in the 5th ed lore.
Yeah.
But I mean,
you're not wrong.
Overall, with general D&D lore, it fits pretty well. Frankly, I'm going to give them slightly more intelligent ravens that can communicate as well as a Kenku can.
Yeah, I would agree with that level of mimicry, almost.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they'll fly back in the voice of the other one.
Well, they have the ability to mimic, but it's very, very
It's rudimentary, yeah.
So, Dave also mentioned using hints and details to encourage future critical thinking in his campaigns. He said that he would not show a Rookery unless it was going to be a plot point within his campaign. He would not show that there were ravens unless it was a plot point in the campaign. He doesn't add details in
willy-nilly.
No. If he adds a detail, it's there for a reason. To encourage critical thinking moving forward for puzzle pieces and shit for his players. Do you do this?
No,
I like my fluff. I like my flavor.
Yeah.
And I want to obfuscate and drop my clues in and among every regular day life.
So this is kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, yes, Dave's right. It would encourage more critical thinking. It get people to pay more attention to the stuff coming out of his mouth as he's playing. But for every single little plot piece or item or environmental, like, landscape piece to be specifically mentioned to have a specific plot point that requires a level of prep I'm not willing to do.
Or it's just omitted, right? Like,
yeah.
I think what Dave is saying is, there's a number of swords hanging around on the wall in the throne room. The one directly behind the throne itself is bright blue. I mean, the player's just going to go right after that bright blue sword, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've made a point. That, to me, is just leading them by the fucking
It's a form of railroading. It's carrot on a sticking.
It really is. I understand when you have inexperienced D&D players or people that are just looking to blow off steam at the end of the week or like whatever it is. If I was going to run online games with strangers, I would be more apt to do that. But around my own homebrew campaign with the people I'm playing with for years that know how I operate, that are looking for clues.
Well, a lot of these things, like, they add meat to the bones of the culture of hobgoblins or whatever mob we're covering, right? Like, it makes them feel more real. It makes them feel like an established society, right? If you just go into a hobgoblin stronghold and everyone's standing in rank and file ready for a fight, and it's just a big open courtyard, maybe a couple little buildings for a smattering of line of sight blocking terrain, then you're just playing a war game. Put down the D&D, play Warhammer. Your enemies, your monsters, they have to have some flesh to them. They have to be, like, fleshed out. I mean, other than skeletons, but they have to have some sort of cultural weight almost to them. Like, they have to feel real for them to be threatening, right? So adding things like a Rookery or the fact that they use ravens is fun and humanizes the enemy in a way that makes them more threatening. Makes the players pause before they draw their swords.
This is why I would definitely include things like ravens. I don't like ravens as messengers and shit. That's never going to come up, right? Unless I'm going to build a specific detail or encounter something around it, it's going to fall by the wayside. But I would still include it in my battle map. I would still, I'd bring it up kind of in passing. And to the left, you see a Rookery, right? And stuff so that there are these details without saying, there's clearly a clue within the Rookery, right? So, which brings us to Dave's other thing about these bloody blue noses.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before that all of the males have these, but it's very specific that there are some that have pronounced blues and
yeah.
and reds.
I mean, they kind of go from blue or red or back and forth, and because hobgoblins have this kind of reddy orange.
You keep saying orange. I don't know where you get that from, man. You have done that a couple of times. I'm like, that is not the fucking color we were looking. There's something. Are you colorblind?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
What is this color?
Red.
Okay. What is this color?
Oh, purple.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, so I just think that the idea of using the nose to signify that someone is special in some way, or like it's a unique leader, or you've got to go hunt down that guy, feels a little video gamey to me.
It does,
right? Like the flashing item on the counter.
It feels like that's where you punch the dude. Like that's the weak point.
Yeah, it's the auto aiming feature just locks in on the glowing red thing on the chest.
Yeah,
but that's the trope that people are used to playing with. Dave is a big video gamer, so I think that's why he leans in that direction. Do you like that? Is that a useful tool?
I mean, it is very much in conjunction with the discussion of rookeries, where I like having it. It makes them feel more fleshed out, makes them feel more real. So I like having this there. It would give no mechanical advantage. It may, if you take down one of those guys, the other hobgoblins might be a little bit more hesitant to attack you, or like they might just take that half step back, right? Like, but it's not going to have a big effect in the game.
Unless you're hunting the guy with the blue nose down, right?
Right. And that could very well end up with you looking into a hobgoblin war camp with 12 hobgoblins, all with blue noses, and now you got to figure out which one it is.
Yeah, but that's fine. And if that's going to be what your encounter is, and that's your mission for the session, that's cool. This is not stuff that I would inherently do. This is stuff that I think that people can lean on if they're... Dave says critical thinking. I want to say if the people that are around the table are not here for a strategy war game.
Yeah.
Right. Then hand feed them some of the answers using these tools and tactics.
Yeah.
There are details with every mob. They can be like, oh, sometimes it's like we mentioned in the Eric Cochran episode that came out. Some of them are eagles and some of them are parrots.
Yeah.
Just hit them with the thing they may not be expecting, or the unique version of it, so that they got something they can focus on.
Yeah. So with all of this focus on war, it's clear that hobgoblins will fall into different ranks in a militaristic style. We did mention that they do have their ranks earlier. Yeah. This is one of the very limited times that 5th edition actually gives us an actual breakdown of what the ranks are.
Yeah, normally they will give you like chief, sub-chief, shaman.
Yeah, and I mean, we read in... if you read in Ravnica, when you're looking at the different guilds, there's kind of ranks in there as well for each guild. But when it comes to this, it's very militaristic, and they've broken it down for us. So your base level hobgoblin is going to be a soldier. This is your main infantry.
Do you use the base hobgoblin stat block for soldiers?
Yes, yeah. I would, yeah.
So what do you use for hobgoblin NPCs?
The base level. I would say...
You do like to do in the DMG where you grab the merchant stat block and then add the hobgoblin...
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And then give a proficiency with all martial weapons because they're bloody hobgoblins.
Well, I mean, the DMG, in theory, does that work for you, but it doesn't quite fit the lore.
If it doesn't fit with the lore, I'll add it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the first level is a soldier. The next level up is a fist. The next level up is a spear. The next level up is a fatal axe.
I'm sorry, a fatal axe?
Fatal axe.
A fatal axe.
Yes.
Okay.
And then after that, we have more traditional rank names of a captain, a general, and a warlord.
So there are 7 ranks.
There's 7 ranks.
That are listed there. Okay. And I would assume that, like, if you are fleshing out a legion, you're going to have a number of generals, one warlord, a number of generals, a number of captains under each general, and so on and so forth. You could, in theory, by the time you break it down, have dozens of, let's say, fists or spears as part of this legion. And we haven't even gotten into bugbears and goblins yet.
And I think...
These hosts are thousands strong.
Well, I also look at things like fatal axe, spear, fist, soldier. Like, their name precludes them to a role in my mind. So like a spear would be the spear of like a spear
spearmen?
formation. I'm not saying like a formation, but they're the ones that are going to, they might be the cavalry, right? Because they're the ones that are going to go and try to break defenses in a spear point.
All right. Yeah. And
fatal axes are going to be your heavy, hard hit, right? They're the guys who are, or even would be the siege weaponeers, right? Or whatever it is. Fists, very specifically, are going to be your kind of hard bludgeoning force.
I wish we had lore and stat blocks
to
for
back
each
that
of
up.
these.
Yeah, I agree. Anyways, we've turned to Terry, who's our own military expert, to run through what a Hobgoblin Captain is. Remember, this is the third highest rank for all Hobgoblins.
Thanks, Adam and Dan, for passing it over to me here at the Green Dragon Inn, where I get to talk about my most favorite Goblinoid that I've been assigned to thus far in the Hobgoblin Captain. Now, the reason why I'm so excited for this one, for those of you that know me quite well, or if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, is that Hobgoblins are of a military background. I myself are of a military background. It seems a long time ago. It seems like another person's life, but it was my life for 6 years, and thusly I have become that person when we're watching movies who is muttering under their breath, "That would never happen. That would never happen. That's ridiculous. How much ammunition does this person have? That person's a captain. Why would they even be there anyway?" I'm that guy. But what that means is when it comes to military type characters in my D&D and the other games that I play, I will ensure that it is accurate, that those characters are acting accordingly to how they would, that the organization that they're with is structured correctly, and that this is a part of the game that I will make sure that there are no holes in, that I am not just trying to make it up as I'm going along. I'm trying to be reacting to what the PCs are doing. I will be very confident in my ability with these types of characters, much like a Hobgoblin Captain would be. So let's take a look at the Hobgoblin Captain, and I'll do some comparisons to a regular Hobgoblin as well. This is a medium humanoid. They're Goblinoid. They're lawful evil because, of course, they're lawful evil because they're going along with a code, because they have very strict training, and they do things in a very specific way. There is nothing chaotic about how Hobgoblins operate. Armor class of 17, they're going to be using half plate. If you're going off the standard flavor text, this is actually slightly lower than a regular Hobgoblin, because a regular Hobgoblin would be assigned a shield, a Hobgoblin Captain would not be. There's room to play with that if you want to though. Higher amount of hit points than a regular Hobgoblin. Regular Hobgoblin is coming in with 2d8 plus 2, Hobgoblin Captain 6d8 plus 12. Speed will be the same, standard speed. When it comes to stats, we're going to see some beefed up stats in comparison to a regular Hobgoblin. We're going to see a higher amount of strength, higher amount of dexterity, higher amount of con, intelligence. Wisdom would be the same, but charisma would be higher. Let's look at their abilities here. They have martial advantage. Once per turn, the Hobgoblin can deal an extra 3d6 damage to a creature it hits with a weapon attack if that creature is within 5 feet of an ally of the Hobgoblin that isn't incapacitated. So essentially this is a tactical move. Because the Hobgoblin Captain has been fighting tactically, putting themselves in a tactically beneficial position, they gain more damage from their attacks. Makes perfect sense, and it puts you as the DM into that tactical mindset now. You know, this likely isn't going to be a roleplay heavy encounter, maybe exploratively heavy, because the Hobgoblin Captain is going to put their team into a position where they can fight strategically, and they will definitely take environment into that fact 100%. But it's definitely going to be a very combat heavy encounter. Tactically heavy, I should say. So with regards to action, they're going to have a multi-attack. They can make 2 greatsword attacks. They're very well practiced. Sorry, I'll start that again. For actions, they have multi-attack. The Hobgoblin makes 2 greatsword attacks. They're very well practiced and very successful martial fighters. This makes sense. So they have a greatsword attack, 2d6 plus 2 piercing damage. Is it piercing damage? I thought it was slashing damage. We'll check that. I always thought greatsword was slashing damage. That might be a typo there, but maybe not. Javelin, that's going to be 1d6 plus 2 piercing damage. They have leadership as well. This recharges after a short or a long rest. For 1 minute, The Hobgoblin can utter a special command or warning whenever a non-hostile creature that it can see within 30 feet of it makes an attack roll or a saving throw. The creature can add 1d4 to its roll provided it can hear and understand the Hobgoblin. A creature can benefit from only one leadership die at a time. The effect ends if the Hobgoblin is incapacitated. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about some unique ideas for Hobgoblin Captains. When it comes to military-like creatures within D&D, I'm telling you, from my perspective, it is your responsibility to do your due diligence on how these creatures might operate. This is a military-type creature. Everything is well-trained, rehearsed, practiced. There are standard operational procedures with how this person would act, and everything will be well thought out, from the environment to the words that it uses to how it controls its emotions to how the soldiers, its other hobgoblins and goblinoids, will move on the battlefield. You should not be making this up on the spot. It should be thought out and rehearsed and done very strategically. Even if you don't care about military history or anything like that, you're nerds. Use lessons you've learned from playing chess or checkers or Warhammer, but use deliberate strategy and use it to the point of a fault as well. And I want you to think about things like the Romans, the strategy and the standard operating procedures of the Romans was the reason that they were so successful. But it was also one of the reasons for their downfall, because in operations like that, it can become very predictable. It will work to a certain success until maybe the enemy changes, until the situation changes. So if you have what's called an opposing force, conventional type warfare, your army versus another army, there's tactics and strategy that we know will work in that situation. But those same tactics and strategy will not work if you have an opposing force against an insurgency, for example, somebody using guerrilla warfare. It will not work the same. So think that way, in that the situation where the Hobgoblin Captain's strategies and tactics will work phenomenally well until the situation changes where it won't work as well. Sounds like a lot of words there, but what I'm thinking is just lean into that type of thinking. It'll make the game very fun, but it also allows the players to think how they're going to beat that conventional strategy. Something that works very well until it doesn't. Hobgoblin Captains are fantastic. I'll nerd out on military stuff all day because it's a huge part of my past. When it comes to the background type stuff of Hobgoblin Captains, when it comes to rank structures, the types of soldiers and officers that will be in certain places, that will be making certain decisions, how they will react to certain things. Remember, a lower ranking Hobgoblin can only approve or allow so much before that person needs to go to the Hobgoblin Captain. The Hobgoblin Captain themselves can only approve or allow so much before they need to go to the next person. It becomes very there's a lot of bureaucracy that will come into this, but it means that your game should not be so fluffy, shouldn't be so fluid, and everybody can just agree to or say whatever they want. You know, they may come on the wrong end of an intimidation roll where the Hobgoblin Captain is intimidated, but they may just not have the information that you are trying to extract out of them. Or they may well be intimidated, but they may not give the information because the person above them is much scarier or will do something much worse to them than the party. You have to think like that with these types of military personnel. Okay, that's it for me on Hobgoblin Captains. Thank you very much, guys. Back over to you, and I'll be here next time you need me.
First of all, Terry's right. In the hands of a Hobgoblin Captain, a greatsword does piercing damage and not slashing damage.
That's weird.
Yeah, I personally checked the official errata as well, where Wizards of the Coast updates misprints, and this has not been amended. So DMs, take heed. You need to choose whether or not this is intentional to give us the idea of a fighting style that they specifically use with a greatsword, or if this is a misprint or an accident that is in there, and you're just going to change it back to slashing damage anyway.
So, Adam, do you know what the traditional Scottish Claymore, how it was actually used on the battlefield?
Yeah, like this.
No. How are you able to bend like that?
Oh, well, look at this.
Oh, no, I don't want to look at that. No, okay. So, anyways, the Claymore has this...
Front towards enemy.
Literally pointy end towards the enemy, but it was often quite used as a main charging weapon, right? So the front line would have their claymores out. They would run forward, usually one hand behind the guard, the other hand on this kind of protected part of the blade, and they would ram it into the front lines, let go of it, and pull out their broadsword, which often had a cage on it. And that is their main weapon.
But you just get 2 attacks with the piercing greatsword.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I how Hobgoblin captains do it doesn't really inform that. Like, maybe poke that one dude and poke another dude. Like, great swords are big weapons. I don't understand, like, this finesse that they have with them, but when you see how trained a Hobgoblin force is, it makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially
only
for some
Hobgoblins have this too.
Yeah, and the third rank from top.
Yeah,
right?
Which means like, they're pretty well trained.
They're pretty well trained. Now, do you agree with Terry's assessment of Hobgoblin enemies relying heavily on strategy and tactics?
Yes, absolutely. Hobgoblins are going to be the most strategic things that we have seen out there on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. Of all of the mobs, and I do mean all of them. I'm trying to, like, really quickly off the top of my head. Okay, maybe devils. Devils because they're militant.
Devils also travel in legions.
Yes, but they got very specific tactics because their rank literally changes their form and their body, right? But I cannot name. I mean, not even Drow or Duergar legions, or like
I would say Drow are conniving.
They're not this militant, right? Elven armies are not as militant and strategic. Like, that is the thing. They bring libraries full of books on war to be able to learn, right? These Hobgoblin captains are going to be the most strategic things on the battlefield, except for the other higher Hobgoblins out there. Your players need to understand that there may only be 4 Hobgoblins, and there are 5 players, but this is still going to go poorly because those Hobgoblins are going to be better strategists. This is when I, as a DM, am going to take the kid gloves off and say, all right, I'm going to build this encounter around the environment. I'm going to put a little outcropping here so I can put an archer behind it. I'm going to put a thing, and I'm going to build this so it's fucking hard. Because that is how Hobgoblins work. Goblins, bugbears, not so much. You fight them anywhere.
Yeah.
But for specifically Hobgoblins, this is when your DM gets to play chess.
It will be incredibly difficult for your party, even the smartest members among your party, to surprise a Hobgoblin.
But I will say this, Terry is also right in the fact that when a strategy works, a Hobgoblin will do it over and over and over until it's proven to have failed. So this is, I mean, it's like shooting at the Borg with the
Eventually they get the
they will learn the frequency and be able to block the phasers, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to go back to the drawing board and recalibrate the phasers and do it again, right? So you are consistently having to update your tactics. If the Hobgoblins are there and they're used to fighting a main force, but you guys come in stealthy or with extra weird magic with reverse gravity, that's going to fuck up the Hobgoblins. Your guys are going to win this round.
Yeah.
Next time, they'll have something for the reverse gravity or for the stealth or for whatever it is.
They're kind of like Taskmaster from the comics.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he learns every strategy and learns his opponent's combat methods as he fights them. Right?
Yes. So
it's why Taskmaster can go toe-to-toe with guys like Captain America, because he learns Captain America's power and uses it against him.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to see with a Hobgoblin Legion, assuming that they can get survivors back. That's the other thing about Hobgoblins that I kind of want to point out. Whereas other people will retreat, they will flee a battlefield. Hobgoblins won't. They will have hey, you know what? We are down 40% and they're down 10%. We are losing this battle. There will be a proper withdraw off the battlefield. We will call these ranks back first. Officers, get your people together. Back we go. And
it feels very like British, like during the American Revolutionary War level stuff, where like everything was so hard focused on their tactics and like their written down military stratagems.
Yes, this is the way that you do this.
Yeah.
I don't think that Hobgoblins are going to be great at
guerrilla warfare.
So they're going to get until that battalion, that banner has lots of experience, and then they will become good at it.
Yeah.
But no, I was going to say they're not good at spontaneity. They're not going to be able to adapt during the battle.
Yeah.
The bugbears will be fucking great at it.
Yeah.
The bugbears are going to be like, oh shit, we're losing. I'm going to start throwing rocks, right? Like, hey, dickhead, over here. And they're just like whipping rocks at people, right?
Yeah.
Goblins will be like, what's that over there? And then fuck off to the left, right? Like they will be very spontaneous, but Hobgoblins are going to say, no, there's a right way to do this.
Well, I completely agree with you. And that is going to be kind of the avenue that your party is going to be able to attack at a Hobgoblin force. Remember that they are very rigid and set in their ways.
This is the difference between the orcs were barbarians. These guys are fighters.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is the big difference that I run in my mind about the idea of military training.
Yeah. Well, moving on, despite the 7 ranks of militaristic Hobgoblins, they only give us 2 stat blocks in 5th edition. 3 if you assume the average Hobgoblin is a basic soldier.
Which I'm not sure I do, but okay.
Okay. There is a lot of room for homebrewing between CR half Hobgoblin and the CR3 Captain, but let's talk with James and jump even higher to CR6, where we have the baddest bat of all, the Hobgoblin Warlord.
Thanks, Adam and Dan. I'm here today to tell you about the Hobgoblins. Hobgoblins operate in a legion, which is further broken into banners. In their society, all orders are to be followed without question, even if they are to result in the individual's death. If it's to bring home glory and honor to the legion or a particular banner. They show deference to their gods, such as idols of Nomagia, who receive a bow in all but emergencies. And if Maglabayet calls to war, they all answer. Though throughout the realms they are known as a violent and hostile race who will take no insult, this has led to a very civilized and a large politeness amongst themselves in order to avoid insult and that insult being answered. A few unique individuals in their society have learned to master the shadows and unarmed combat. And in this they have become the secret police to stomp out any embers of rebellion or uprising before they can occur. They are called the Iron Shadows. When it comes to matters of magic, unlike many other races, the Hobgoblins will go out of their way to test each member of their race to see who has a unique skill with magic. Those who are found with a unique skill are taken to a special location to be taught devastating spells of evocation to act as mobile turrets on the battlefield. These particular Hobgoblins, known as Devastators, are rarely taught utility spells and more to be used as a function of war. Hobgoblin legions will search for a place to settle down to raise and train the next generation. They will look for places that have access to the resources they need, such as iron and wood. And on occasion, they will set up trading posts at the edge of their lands to trade gold and items with outsiders. Now I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the Hobgoblin Warlord themselves. These creatures have an AC roughly of about 20, because they wear plate mail and have a shield. Hit points are 13d8 plus 39 and a movement speed of 30. Their strength is fairly strong, dexterity is better than human, constitution also fairly strong, intelligence once again better than human, wisdom is average, and their charisma is also average. They have a saving throws in wisdom, intelligence, and charisma, a dark vision out to 60 feet, and a passive perception of 10. The languages they know are Common and Goblin, and their challenge rating is about 6. Hobgoblin Warlords have a special ability called Martial Advantage. Once per turn, they are able to do an extra 4d6 damage to a creature it hits with a weapon attack that is within 5 feet of an ally of the Hobgoblin that isn't incapacitated. Hobgoblin Warlords also have multi-attack, 3 melee attacks or 2 javelins. For melee attacks, they have access to a long sword, which is plus 9 to hit, 5-foot range, does 1d8 plus 3 damage, or 1d10 plus 3 if used two-handed. They also have Shield Bash for plus 9 to hit, 5-foot range, 1d4 plus 3 if the target is larger or smaller, a DC 14 strength saving throw, or it will be knocked prone. They also have a javelin, which can be used melee or ranged, 5-foot melee range, or 30-foot with 120-foot disadvantage ranged, 1d6 plus 3. They also have a unique ability called leadership that recharges after a long or short rest. It gives them the ability for 1 minute to see any non-hostile creature within 30 feet and add a 1d4 to its attack or saving throw. They also have the reaction called parry. The Hobgoblin can add 3 to its AC against 1 melee attack if it can see the attacker and the attacker's wielding a melee weapon. In conclusion, a well-prepared Hobgoblin Warlord with its banners and legion below him would be a challenge for any army or any party to face. So I'd be careful following any goblins or hobgoblins into dungeons or ruins, because you never know what you're going to find there. As I continue to pore over the volumes in the stone library of Graven Hollow, I'll throw it back to you, Dan and Adam.
So before we go any further, here's another mob member with a shield and a versatile weapon. Remember, if you're going to use the bigger damage die, that means the Warlord is dropping his shield and its AC drops by 2 until he picks up his shield again.
Yeah, I mean, they need to fucking say that somewhere in the...
They don't.
Yeah.
Right? Versatile, if you're using the bigger damage, he's using 2 hands. He can't hold a shield. Like, come on, guys.
Also, okay, what do you think the logic is behind the Hobgoblin not getting a shield when it's a captain in favor of the greatsword and then adopting a shield again when it becomes a warlord? Well, hold on. Does this indicate a shift in thinking, where captains are more offensively minded, but warlords see the benefit of balanced tactics?
No. I think it has to do with rank. A warlord understands that he must survive to run the... So
you don't think a captain... Yeah, but base Hobgoblin carries a shield.
Yes, but a
soldier carries a shield.
Yes, but a captain will...
Who pokes. Remember, he's piercing.
Yeah.
He's a pokey.
Yeah.
Also, I think he have a fucking tower shield that he's poking around, right? Like,
yeah, but then he couldn't use a greatsword.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's still... this piercing thing drives me nuts. Anyway.
I honestly think it's just... The way a captain plays his role out in the Legion, in like the actual on the battlefield, is going to be at the tip of the spear. He's the guy leading his forces. He's the William Wallace, right? Like, he's going to be charging first ahead of everybody else. And that requires him to have this big F-off weapon to start the point, right? The Warlord isn't going to be the first one in the fray. The captain will. The warlord won't be. The warlord's going to hang back a little bit. He knows he's got to run the strategy. He's running the forces. He needs to be able to lift that shield to block an arrow so he could command.
Do you think that the warlord would even be on a battlefield for smaller skirmishes?
For smaller skirmishes? Hell no.
He's only there for the giant big move. Today we siege that fort.
Yes.
I will be here to oversee this.
Yeah. I see the warlord maybe not having gained a little bit of pudge from inactivity because he's still a hobgoblin. He is still going to be like training and everything else, but he is aged. He might be a little bit slower.
I disagree. I disagree 100%. CR fucking 6. All right. You need shit tons of magic to be any sort of goblinoid that can come close to a hobgoblin warlord.
Enough, yeah.
These guys are Tywin Lannister.
Yes.
They are sitting there. You're right. They're a little bit older, but they will fuck you up on a battlefield.
Yeah.
They know because they've done it. They've got the experience. They are sitting there looking at the map with all the different colored pieces on the map going, okay, so that cavalry just fell. Do we have any news about the left rank? And that's where we're going with the Hobgoblin Warlord. By the time you get into a fight with him, this is the end of your Goblinoid campaign, right?
Yeah. Speaking of their experience with strategy and stuff, you see this parry ability, and it's a lot of fun, but it's got a couple extra prerequisites. The Warlord has to be wielding a melee weapon, and it only uses it on attacks it knows will hit.
Yeah.
Right?
That's really useful as a DM.
Yeah. Which means it's not going to waste it on weaker attacks. Do you include the shield as a melee weapon for this, considering it has a shield bash attack?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. I do too, and it adds a lot of really cool flavor.
You can fucking parry with a shield.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not great, but it's not perfect by the definition of what a parry is. But 100% see a warlord being able to use a shield effectively enough to knock someone the fuck back.
Yeah.
Right? And then pick up the sword.
It bothers me that Hobgoblin warlords are the only ones who get this. I would love to
I'd give it to a general too if I was going to.
Well, I would like to have this as a player.
There are all sorts of fucking crazy things players can do already. I don't need to hand this out. Maybe if you're going to build a special kind of fighting style.
A shield fighter should have something like this. Like an offensive shield fighter. As a fighting style. I agree, it should be a fighting style.
Yeah, it feels like it's a
or a battle
sixth
master
level.
thing?
It's a 6th level subclass feature.
Yeah, so like a battle master thing. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, there are more kinds of Hobgoblin warriors than your average military structure implies. In Volos, we got 2 more kinds of unique stat blocks that give us a bit of a deeper understanding of Hobgoblin culture. So we're going to go to Brad to get more information here.
Hey guys, Brad here today to talk to you about Hobgoblins, specifically the Hobgoblin Devastator. The Hobgoblin Devastators are casters amongst the Hobgoblins, much improved over the Hobgoblins, and they study in a place called the Academy of Devastation. For those of you who don't know, the Academy of Devastation is a training ground for Goblin casters, effectively. The flavor text around it goes like this. Hobgoblins know the exact value of arcane magic and warfare. Where other cultures treat magic as an individual pursuit, a calling that's only a select few can even attempt, Hobgoblins practice mass indoctrination and testing to identify every potential caster in the rank. The Academy of Devastation is a Hobgoblin institution made up of spellcasters. Members are sent abroad to test young Hobgoblins. Those who show an aptitude for magic are enrolled in the Academy, brought to a hidden school, and subjected to a rigorous regimen of drills, exercises, and study. In the Academy's view, every young student is a potential new Devastator, destined to be forged into a weapon of war. Hobgoblin Devastators have a little knowledge or use of spells that have no use in the battlefield. They are taught potent, destructive spells and also learn the fundamentals of evocation magic. The death and destruction they bring about is worthy of as many accolades as the ruin brought by traditional warriors. Luckily for their enemies, Devastators seldomly employ sophisticated tactics, functioning essentially as a mobile artillery battery. They can bring tremendous force to bear, but rarely display the versatility and inventiveness of spellcasting elves and humans. A few do become accomplished tacticians in their own right, and it's uncommon for such an individual to serve as not uncommon for such an individual to serve as a warlord of the Legion. Now, Hobgoblin Devastators, unlike their Hobgoblin counterparts, are a much improved version of the Hobgoblin, where Hobgoblins have a CR of 1/4, I believe. We've got a CR of 4 for the Devastators. They have an array of spellcasting abilities and improve stats in almost every area over the standard Hobgoblin. So the Hobgoblins Devastators themselves, they've got above average strength, dex, they've got a pretty good con, an excellent int, they are int casters after all, a decent wisdom, and okay charisma, with no stat being below 10. They're actually pretty well statted out. They're skilled in Arcana, and like all Hobgoblins and Goblinoids, they do come with Dark Vision and languages in Common and Goblin. So Hobgoblins have an ability called Martial Advantage, which gives them an extra 2d6 damage on melee attacks if there's someone else in range. Well, Hobgoblin Devastators get the same ability when they are casting spells. So if there is an ally within 5 feet of an enemy when they cast a spell at that enemy, that they will deal an extra 2d6 damage, as long as the ally is incapacitated. They also have an ability which is really interesting called Army Arcana, which when they cast a spell that causes damage or forces someone to make a saving throw, it can choose itself in any number of allies, yes, any number of allies, to become immune to the damage caused by the spell and to succeed on the required saving throw. Any number. That's crazy. As far as spellcasting goes, they are 7th level spellcasters, and they have wizard spells prepared. They are int casters. So the cantrips that they have prepared are Acid Splash, Firebolt, Ray of Frost, and Shocking Grasp. They have 4 first level slots that they can cast on Fog Cloud, Magic Missile, or Thunder Wave. They have 3 second level spots that they can use on their choice of Gust of Wind, Melf's Acid Arrow, or Scorching Ray. They have 3 third level slots that they can choose Fireball, Fly, or Lightning Bolt, and 1 4th level spot that they can use to cast Ice Storm. Now you'll notice a lot of these, almost all of them, are damage spells, as it said in the flavor text. The goal of Hobgoblin Devastators is to do as much damage as possible on the battlefield. They're not really interested in utility. So the one that does stand out to me in that sense, we've got a couple, but Fog Cloud, Gust of Wind, and Fly, while they do a good job of controlling, manipulating a battlefield, they don't really fit into that all damage all the time mindset. But it just goes to show that even a caster that's focused essentially on doing as much damage as possible still wants to have some utility on the battlefield and can use it to their advantage in order to do more damage. As far as melee attacks, should somebody get into their range, they do have a quarterstaff that they can use to make an attack. They actually have +3 to hit with it, and it does 1d6 plus 1 bludgeoning damage. So it's not terrible. A little bit of flavor on the Devastators themselves. In Hobgoblin Society, the Academy of Devastation identifies hobgoblins with a talent for magic and puts them through a grueling training regimen that endows them with the ability to call down fireballs and other destructive magic on the host's behalf. A Hobgoblin Devastator on the battlefield is simultaneously a boon to all its allies and a threat to every foe around it. While other cultures treat their wizards as cloistered academics, hobgoblins expect their spellcasters to fight. Devastators learn the basics of weapon use, and they measure their deeds by the enemies defeated through their magic. Devastators have the respect of other members of the host, and they receive obedience and deference from many quarters. Their ability to lay waste to entire formations with a single use of magic allows them to gain far more glory in battle than a single warrior. Other cultures might view the use of such abilities as a shortcut to glory, but hobgoblins, a gift for magic, is valued and useful as a strong sword arm or brilliance in tactics. They are all boons from the Bouliet that must be cultivated and unleashed upon the enemy. Devastators study a simplified form of evocation magic. Their training lacks the theory and context that the other folks study, making them skilled in battle but relatively illiterate on the finer points of how and why their magic works. The Academy of Devastation believes that an academic approach to magic is a sign of weakness and inefficiency. A warrior doesn't need to know about metallurgy to wield a blade, so why would a wizard care about where the magic comes from? Devastators love to prove their superiority in battle by seeking out enemy spellcasters and destroying them. I love the flavor of the Hobgoblin Devastator, and honestly I'm a little bit afraid of its power. It really is quite potent, and at a CR4, if it's well used by a DM, it could do a lot more damage than you would expect for something at CR4. Especially if it's protected by other allies, other hobgoblins, or other goblinoids. I really would personally lean into the fact that they're not focused on tactics and controlling the battlefield as much as they are as just pure devastation. I really like the fact that, like a warrior doesn't care how his sword's made as long as it does its job. Who cares how the magic is made or where it comes from as long as it can be harnessed and used to destroy your enemies? I would have my Hobgoblin Devastators be absolute maniacs on the field of battle. Screeching, hollering, screaming at the top of their lungs, cackling. You would hear them their laughter shortly before being blasted with a fireball. These guys are maniacal, they're wicked, they're evil, and they are very powerful and not to be trifled with. I'd love to hear how you guys would use these guys in your campaign, or if you've had any encounters with them in the past. How have they been played? Have they been a little more cunning and self-controlled, or are they just wild, merciless beasts on the battlefield? Let me know. Reach out to me at Clueless Game Master on Instagram, or catch me through the podcast. Look forward to hearing from you. Back to you, Dan and Adam.
Okay, first of all, he says Arcana.
It's Arcana, Brad.
No, it is not. It is Arcana in North America. It is Arcana in Britain.
So apparently Brad's British?
Apparently. So he and Terry will get along. I remember having this argument with Terry, like way back when.
Yeah.
But
we should really gun for this Terry and Brad hosted show.
I'm afraid that they will just fall in love and leave us high and dry and leave themselves low and wet. So the Army Arcana or Arcana, Brad, is a great little detail that allows them to avoid friendly fire, right? Being able to choose to not hit anyone within the range, that's pretty fucking useful. But it is just even more so thematically a good fit for this kind of caster. The Hobgoblin Devastator is out there to do exactly what it says in the title.
Yeah.
He's out there to fucking devastate.
Yeah.
Right? And so he is going to do as much damage as possible. That's why, like as Brad says, all of the fucking offensive spells are, or all of the spells are offensive, except for maybe like 2.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are supposed to be used in combat.
Absolutely. Even their little subsections in Volos itself, right above the stat block, it says, into the fray, only results matter. These guys, they're using simple evocation magic. They're using straightforward tactics, and they are going to really bolster the formations that they're a part of by hitting hard and hitting often and hitting fast.
Yeah. One of the constant 5e design mentalities is that casters are squishier than your average physical fighter.
Yeah.
This AC of 13 and 78 plus 14 hit points really lean into that as well. Considering that they're decent tacticians and they've trained to avoid hitting allies with spells, it's clear that the Devastators would wreak havoc from the back of the formation and would avoid any physical confrontation if possible.
Yeah, I mean, the AC of 13, everybody else.
And no mage armor.
No, and that is by far the lowest. Your Hobgoblin has an AC of 18.
Yeah.
Right, so...
This dude's walking up in like, a red shirt and like, books and a staff and whatnot, but he's not heavily armored. He doesn't have a shield.
Well, he's got studded leather, and that's it, right?
That's barely anything.
That's barely anything.
Yeah. Do you agree with Brad's idea that they're wild and chaotic and yelling and whooping? And
no.
I don't either.
No, I mean, I get why he would say that. I mean, they are supposed to be these... Compared to everyone else who's a rank-and-file military, having that one guy in the corner blasting fireballs, right? And here's a sleet storm and shit. Does seem like it's crazy out of the blue, but for me, this feels like the wizard standing on the turret, creating difficult terrain over here, and blowing up that push forward by the left flank over there. And
we see in like with the bugbear mount options how there's this idea that in a goblin host, in a Hobgoblin host or a Goblinoid host, there are going to be these large like pack animals that have howdahs on them.
Yep.
I see one of these guys standing in a howdah surrounded by a bunch of bugbears.
A howdah, by the way, is a structure like those little huts on the backs of elephants that you traditionally see. I mean, I think Aladdin was in one for a bit.
I mean, if you've watched Lord of the Rings when they take down the Oliphants, that's what is on the back of them, right? I keep on wanting to say Oliphants, but I realize that's Timothy Oliphant, and that's...
No, I think that's how it's pronounced. Honestly, I just... Super Legolas pisses me off. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Anyways.
So, no, I don't necessarily agree with the whooping and the yelling, although they are going to be casting big magic with area of effect stuff, so I do picture them yelling.
I mean, yes.
The same way that when Gandalf casts a big spell, there's more voice behind it.
It's going to be more Gandalf casting a big spell, and definitely not like Doctor Strange casting a thing with like glowing runes in the air very quietly and methodical. Right?
I mean, it could be. It depends on how you want to play the Devastator. It talks about the Academy of Devastation, which is where they go to learn this shit, but we don't get any details of what that's like, and that's a really cool thing that I wish they would have fleshed out.
What do you think it is? Like, how would you flavor that? Just knowing like Academy of Devastation, what would you do?
It's Hogwarts.
It's
Hogwarts,
including the ruins in the back.
It's Hogwarts, but the only class is Defense Against the Dark Arts.
I mean, so it's the movie Hogwarts. Check. Okay. Anyways, so there's.
Did you see any of the movies?
Not really. I hate Harry Potter.
It's pronounced Harry Potter.
No, Harley Potter.
Harley Potter. You don't like Harry Potter?
I really don't.
Why? Is it because it has a system that ignores your standard fantasy?
Yes.
That's it. You're just a fantasy purist. That is actually what it is about. You are one of the Death Eaters in it. You say, hey, you know what? True fantasy is better than your average standard, whatever the bullshit, mixed blood, mudblood nonsense.
I have no problem with
that. You are Voldemort.
No, I have no problem with that side of the story. There's some logical inconsistencies there that really, really bother me.
For example?
With what they can do with magic, how are they not more present in the like Muggle life, right? Because
they purposefully stay out of Muggle life.
Yes,
because there are so
by
few
population alone,
their population size is very small.
I know it. It's not the impression they give with the fact that there are multiple schools like Hogwarts.
There are literally 3 schools
in the entire world, or in Britain.
3 schools
in the entire world, or Britain.
In the entire world,
that's not true because there's the in the first Harry Potter movie alone.
Harry Potter.
There's Hogwarts, where all of the Fae chicks come from and where all the Russian Bolsheviks come from.
Okay. So you mean in the fourth movie when there are the...
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, when there are... See,
but
you don't know what you're talking about.
But then you go to the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies and...
So not canon, but sure.
No, they are canon.
Not in my world. Anyways, no, sure. Yeah, okay, hit me.
There's a bunch of American academies that are in play as well. So, like, it's not just the one. It seems like every country has several. There are some logical inconsistencies to it that bother me, and also J.K. Rowling as a person annoys me.
Hold on. Okay, first and foremost, I'm not going to go on blast publicly in a podcast to rip on J.K. Rowling, but trans people are people, so let's just leave it at that and move on. So I am going to say you don't know enough of what you're talking about to be able to have any real complaints about this. I'm just saying, this is like me saying, I don't like Star Trek because I don't understand how their fucking portal things make them go down to the surface every once in a while. Just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. As a person who is raised on fantasy, who loves fantasy as much, they took some base level, like base lore that is fairly universal, like say trolls, and messed up how they behave. I mean, I understand that their own thing. It's not my flavor. I do not like the Harry Potter movies because of how they
they called an ogre a troll.
Yeah, kinda.
That's your argument.
Well, that's just an example.
You are so pedantic.
That is just an example of my problems with it.
Hit us up in the subreddit. Who's right, me or Dan?
Oh no, it is my unpopular opinion. I do not like Harry Potter, and I'm unapologetic about it. I don't. So, anyways.
I just don't think that you have given him a chance.
I have. My wife is a die-hard Harry Potter fan.
That's what it is.
No, it's just not what it is at all.
We figured it out.
So, anyways, there's more than one kind of hobgoblin left. We're going to move on here through hobgoblins, and it's got a mindset all of its own. So, we've gone to Megan, who's our own martial arts...
Who's a Ravenclaw.
Who's our own martial arts expert on the podcast, and got the details from Castle Ravenloft.
Hey guys, and thanks for the intro. As you said, it's Megan here, live from the basement of the Castle of Ravenloft, where we continue to, for a lack of better terms, bag and tag. Well, I'm so glad you're reaching out to me again, because I do have some thoughts on Hobgoblin's Iron of Shadows. But first, let me give you a little bit of a background here. So to picture these folks, picture a hobgoblin, but as a monk, or monk-like, kind of like a secret society of assassins. They are servant to the priest of Maglubiet, and are tasked with squashing any potential threat or uprising that could potentially occur against said priest. So they are actually recruited and trained at any age in their development or, in their age group for being a hobgoblin. So very different from what I would consider the only thing I can really compare them to is the Jedi. But that's honestly what I imagine them. An evil Jedi order. Literally.
Megan, the term for evil Jedi is
a Sith. God damn it, Megan.
They are tested to see if they are dedicated enough, and if they actually fail, they die. And those who pass are chosen to be trained. So to me, again, evil Jedi. That's just kind of where I'm sitting with these. The art that they're trained in is called Masters of Shadow Fist. Sorry, let me do it again. So the art that they're trained in is actually the Masters of Shadow and Fist. Basically an unarmed martial arts style mixed in with a little bit of dark magic, or dark shadowy magic, shall we say, to be sneaky and deceptive to basically their enemies and be able to be secret, very quiet, assassin-like creatures. And if it doesn't really get any creepier than that, when they're actually on mission, they wear masks to make them look more fucking creepy and devilish. The idea is basically to keep their identities a secret so they can continue to walk in the shadows, so they say. So I will give you kind of a quick breakdown here, because they do differ from your classic regular weapon fighting hobgoblin. So these guys have a solid armor class of 15. If you think about it, I feel like they don't even wear armor. They don't really say that, but I feel like if they did, it'd be very light to stay quiet and hidden. They've got some solid hit points, 5d8 plus 10. So they feel a little bit squishy, but I mean, to be honest with you, their challenge rating is only a 2. So it kind of checks out for being your regular hobgoblin henchman, but just with a little bit of extra. They do have a speed of like over 30, so they're over their average speed. They're at 40 in comparison to a regular human or the original Hobgoblin, which is only at 30. So these guys, they're kind of tankish. They do have a high strength, a high dex, and a high con. So you will not be able to really hit these guys that easily. Strength being at +2, dex being at +3, con being at +2. But one of the huge differences I see between these hobgoblins and the regular hobgoblins is that their intelligence wisdom is actually at a +2 each. So these guys are smart. I feel like these are the ones that you can't really fool. You're not going to come up to one of these and, pretend to be one of them or pretend to be their master. Like, they're smart enough to come at you, right? Their charisma, however, is at a straight 0, so they're basically just going to be they're going to be able to communicate with you. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting... I love these guys as more of a role-playing aspect to come into your team. So for them, they do have a bunch of skills in acrobatics and athletics and stealth. So again, this kind of checks out to the fact that these guys are like assassins trying to sneak around in the dark and come at you and be secret, or, just come in, stab one of your players and run away. Just to kind of start off a new little set piece or what have you. They do have common language, as well as, sorry, do it again. The languages are common in Goblin, which means, again, that checks out to the fact that these things are going to be able to communicate with you. They could even be really good translators should they make friends with your group of folks. Again, really cool set piece opportunities with these guys, with the fact that they can strategize, communicate, and entertain the idea that, that they can probably lead hobgoblins around as well, right? So for abilities with these guys, they are spellcasters. So they are 2nd level spellcasters. Their spellcasting ability is based on their intelligence. Again, that's why their intelligence is a little bit higher than a regular hobgoblin. They do have a spell save DC. So if you are fighting one of these and they throw a spell at you, it's actually going to be pretty tough to avoid, even though it's only a DC of 12. But if you're going to come up with one of these guys that are young... I didn't like any of that. Let me do that again. So because their casting ability, it comes from intelligence, they do have a spell save DC of 12. So if you are a young party, this might be hard to avoid some of their abilities. They do have cantrips, so at will they can cast Minor Illusion, Prestidigitation, True Strike, and then at 1st level they do have 3 spell slots at 1st level. So Charm Person, Disguise Self, Expeditious Retreat, and Silent Image. So all of these spells really check out to the fact that these guys are trying to stay hidden, trying to fool you, trying to decept you, or just someone that's really good to hire if you want someone dead in secret, right? They do have unarmed defense, while the Hobgoblin is wearing, so again, they have... So in previous theory, and the fact that they don't wear armor checks out. They do have unarmored defense. So their AC is included in their wisdom modifier, and they don't wield, shields or have armor or anything like that. I guess, again, it feels like they need to be secretive and quiet. So for actions, if you're fighting one of these guys, they do have a multi-attack. So these guys can actually make 4 attacks. So think about your monk with their Fury of Blows. This is kind of what they have. So they can attack 4 times with an unarmed strike, or what they have is a dart attack. So think like little poisonous blow darts, probably. That's something that they could definitely carry if you wanted to flesh out your character a little bit more. It can also use Shadow Jaunt once, which I'll get to in a little bit here, should it choose to. So it's unarmed strike, to give a little bit more detail, is a +5 to hit with a reach of 5 feet, and gives 5 hit points on average, or 1d4 plus 3 of just basic bludgeoning damage. So it's going to punch you pretty hard. And then their dart attack is a ranged attack at +5 to hit. It does have a solid range of 20 feet or 60 feet at max. And it's got same kind of thing, usually on average 5 or 1d4 plus 3 piercing damage. So if your opponents or your team are going up one of these and you have armor, it could probably hit you with these darts here. And then, as I mentioned, they have Shadow Jaunt. So this is the Hobgoblin can actually transport itself, which I think is a really neat little spell to have that's very specific to them. And I like how it does have to mention within the books and the writings that it takes their equipment and what it's wearing and carrying with it, which I think is hilarious because there's a lot of transportation spells that don't mention that. So I thought it was funny, just the idea of a hobgoblin using this ability and suddenly it appears naked somewhere. But anyways, it's up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space. So this is your kind of traditional, it's just going to flashbang itself out of there if it needs to, right? So it's got a good retreat opportunity, because again, they are quite squishy. So if it does end up in the throes of battle, they can get themselves out, which I think is really cool. So honestly, as I kind of stated throughout my explanation of these guys, my favorite piece is that they are intelligent creatures, and they are, not stupid in any way, shape, or form. So I would love to use these guys as set pieces for either mobster bosses that you actually have to communicate with, or like if you come across a group of hobgoblins somewhere, or just goblins in general, they're being led by one of these. That's going to be the leader of their clan or leader of their group. And your job is to try and befriend one of these or utilize them. Or maybe they're like an assassin for hire that you use in a game, right? That ends up following you around because it's intrigued by your mission or your mystery that you're going towards, right? I just love the idea that normally if you come across a hobgoblin, you're not going to talk to it. Kind of like in my episode of kobolds, which you guys haven't listened to, feel free to do so. But, talk to your kobolds, talk to your hobgoblins. I feel like they have a lot of really cool stories behind them. And the fact that these guys have a little bit of a religious piece and background to them, I think would be really cool to kind of incorporate, especially if you have a wizard or warlock or someone within your group that would be very interested in the magic that they can wield, right? Because these are spells that are very specific to them, not necessarily any other being. So I think that's a really cool thing about them. Alright guys, I'm going to try and get some sleep and not have nightmares about anything that's going on here at the castle. So, as always, if you want to get a hold of me, you can follow me on Instagram at OmegaO, which is actually 0MEGGA0. So, honestly, back to you guys at the holders of the fort. Dan and Adam, back to you. Yeah, I'd be very interested to hear what you guys would do with these guys. Would you use them as just like a horde of assassins, or would you use them in a campaign as like a potential big bad for a small group of adventurers? What are you guys' thoughts?
Okay, did you notice that the art for the Iron Shadow is the only female hobgoblin we see? I 100% believe that Megan is one of these scary, devil-looking assassins.
That's kind of rude.
I am giving her the respect that she is...
You said she's devil-looking. She will remember that.
She would also cackle hysterically, and by the time she's done laughing, you have 3 little fucking jagged daggers sticking out of your spleen.
And they're all made from your ribs that she has just
this
previously
proves
removed.
My point. Yes. Yeah, so anyway.
So she said that the AC of these guys is 15. And if you reverse engineer the stats like it describes in the description of the unarmored defense, you can see that it will get this from a +3 dex and a +2 wisdom, just like a monk would. The unarmored defense, multiple weak attacks, and increased speed really reinforces that this is a monk archetype.
It's weird that we don't get more details about this for actual monks. We've got a fucking shadow monk.
Yeah.
Right? Why? You know what? I just want more details. 5e is so lore light. And I know that it's meant to have so that anybody can pick it up and run with it. You don't need to get into it.
Yep.
Make it up as you need. And I get that. But for those of us that fucking love it, we need to do better than 3 books a year. One of them is a generic landscape way the fuck over there.
Yeah.
One of them is just, and also think about wizards and rangers and things this way. And then one of them is, moderately useful.
Yeah.
For the average DM. I want lore books. Give me fucking lore books. Anyway, because of the stealthy nature and the low CR, are you ambushing like Megan implied, or are you leaning on these guys like the Foot Clan? Like a bunch of nameless ninjas?
I mean, both.
They're CR2.
They're CR2, so, I definitely wouldn't just throw hordes of them at a party.
I would if they're a level,
if they're
11
level 10,
party.
Yeah, level 10, 11 party, maybe. It brings up that old discussion of what is going to be more powerful, a single ninja or a horde of ninjas?
The single ninja is always the most powerful thing. It's pirate and ninja and robot rules. When you have an army of them, you can knock them down, no problem. When there's one left, it has a name, and you will never defeat it, and it will kill your best friend.
Yes.
So, it is impossible to actually fight pirates, ninjas, or robots, because you will eventually knock it down to just one, and then that guy will have a backstory, and now you're fucked. So... I don't know. I would treat these guys as the Foot Clan. I would have one show up and be an NPC or an ally or something at very, very low levels. Like appears in the inn on the roadside tavern, right, at 3 o'clock in the morning with a message. Like, I've slaughtered your mounts. This is a message. Do not come any closer. And then smoke bomb, poof, they're gone. And then way later, you run into like 6 of these guys, and they fuck up your party something fierce, but your party limps away.
Yeah.
And then way later than that, you've got a fight against like 12 of them.
I would definitely have these guys. I like the single assassin for like a tier 1 party.
Yeah.
Have him be like the focus, or have her be the focus
There are
of a multiple session arc.
There's so many. I mean, it's a CR2 though, so you have to do this multiple sessions at level 1, level 2, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's a hobgoblin, so it's going to play into the tactics of the surroundings.
You are right.
Playing into the tactics of the surroundings could add several CR in that fact alone.
Look, between the fucking Red Fang of Shargas, which we covered in the second Orc episode, and fucking Revenants, and there's so many middle-of-the-night assassins that exist out there. I want to flavor these guys differently.
Do you want to make them more NPC, like Megan suggested?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So the spell list for these guys kind of leads in that direction as well, because it almost is entirely roleplay and stealth-based. So, I mean, it kind of checks out that they're just NPCs.
Yeah, I mean, to a point, I can see that I would use them as mystery intrigue, or as a couple of, like, advanced scouts, like, running across the rooftop in the middle of the night. And
Yeah.
I'm going to sprinkle these guys around before you actually run into the host itself. You'll run into a handful of goblins here and there, a couple of bugbears that got separated, and then these hobgoblins in the middle of the night. Okay, so Megan also mentions that their Shadow Jaunt ability is good for getting them out of battles.
Yeah.
But it would be better if it was a reaction. It's
I
not.
agree, yeah.
The fact that you can use it before or after any one of their attacks is what makes them particularly annoying. This is fucking whack-a-mole. But I love the idea of them running up, bang, 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 poof, and they're gone. And you're just like, what the fuck just happened? Because this is not going to trigger opportunity attacks.
No.
This is just going to be them running up. They slap you for their like minimal little 5 damage. Pop, 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 and then they're fucking gone. And like, what the shit just happened? And then they're running at you from behind. Poof, gone again.
Yeah.
There's no recharge on this.
No.
So this is why I say I want to throw like 8 of these at a level 10 party, right? Because that's going to feel super powerful, but they're weak. At level 10, you're going to knock 3 of these guys down in the first round if you can target them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really want to hit home this fact that hobgoblins are strategic thinkers by a generalization, right?
Yes.
So these guys, especially being these kind of weird assassins with this, Shadow Jaunt's ability, they're not going to be out in the open for you to easily hit unless they intend to be out in the open for you to easily hit for a reason.
Yeah, they're the distractions the other 3 can get in behind you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So the other thing that I would say about these guys is they're not Danny Ocean. They're not Carmen Sandiego. They may be sneaking around and getting in behind enemy lines and whatnot. But the moment the plan goes bad, again, they're not spontaneous.
No.
These are hobgoblins. The moment it goes bad, they will just leave that one there to die, and the rest of them will fuck off into the shadows. They will try again another time.
Yeah.
They will be back and in greater numbers.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thanks to everyone who's helped on this episode. I mean, we really hammered those guys pretty hard to get their clips in and shit. So we miss having all of you guys here with us, and we hope that everyone is staying safe and happy out there, except for Dave.
I just want to remind everybody that you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and r/itsAmimic on Reddit. You can always reach out to us through our email at info@itsamimic.com because we love hearing from you guys, and any questions that you send us will get added to our lists for upcoming mailbag episodes. Okay, Adam, as we typically do after the shout out here with these episodes, we want to talk about a little bit about what we've learned about these things and what they inform us about the mob structure. So when you're thinking about hobgoblins, how are you building this legion? How are you... I mean, it's fairly informed with these ranks, but like, is there any sort of interesting notes you could pull out of here? Let's roll initiative.
Sure.
I got a 1.
I got a 16, and honestly, I think that we've covered a lot of it. They are so straightforward with the militaristic viewpoint that what you see is what you get with them. What would be interesting here would be how they are interacting with the other goblinoids.
Yep.
But even then, they're barking orders. And when a bugbear or a bugbear gang is just like, no, fuck you, we're not doing it, then the hobgoblins and the goblins and the other bugbears will just come in, round them up, tie them up, and execute them on the block. That's it. Like, there's not a whole lot of room for political intrigue here. What the warlord says goes. He is essentially a dictator. He's just not a selfish dictator.
Yeah.
The thing that sticks out in my mind is we talk about when the host gets the call. What fucking call?
Yeah, right?
So I assume that we've seen this in previous editions, but I don't know what it is. I guess that it is an omen from Maglubiat.
Well,
I guess that when there are enough hobgoblins in one area and one warlord steps up, when one warlord dies and another one steps forward and is a clear winner, like there's got to be some sort of cultural or societal trigger.
Honestly, what I think it is it is going to be that one. I don't want to use the term blessed, but like one gifted warlord is going to stand up and decide that it is time. Like, I think it depends on that one warlord stepping up and be like, it's time to form a host. Let's go.
Yes, but I just don't think that it's going to be done for, personal political gain, or I need to stay in power and everyone else is against me. Or I just think that it's like, it's not a selfish reason, because and all of them answer to Maglubiat. Hard stop.
Yeah.
So there is a definitive call. The same way that Krgorbayog was giving definitive omens about slavery to the freaking goblins, there will be definitive omens. I just don't know what they are. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what that traditional call is. And it could just be the warlord wakes up in the morning and is just, today we go to war. And maybe that's all it is. And that's all that the inspiration needs to be. But there should be a call. And if I'm going to have a Goblinoid campaign or major Arcana campaign where I'm bringing all of the hosts together, I need to know what that call was.
I think this is one of those situations where I like the use of ravens, right? I like the use of having a warlord know where the local goblin tribes are, where the local bugbear gangs are, and he sends a raven out with just the simple symbol of Maglubiat on it, right? And this goes out, lands at the bugbear den, hops in. Bugbear picks it up, looks at it, sees the thing on its, maybe even crushes the raven, because why wouldn't it? Pull this note off and be like, oh, well, crap, okay, we need to march to the stronghold. Because these strongholds are known locations, they are heavily fortified, and all of the goblins and bugbears and hobgoblins in the area would know where it is.
Do you think there are multiple strongholds throughout, a country? As there are different...
100%.
But there's, the capital...
I don't think it depends on how successful the host was that kind of established everybody. Right?
And these are the details that I want in the 5th ed lore.
Well, it says each legion will set up its own stronghold. So I think each legion has its own stronghold strewn about.
Right. But when the host comes together, do they come together in the Hobgoblin capital?
Yes. And that Hobgoblin capital will be whoever the warlord's stronghold is.
Yeah, okay. And do you think there are multiple warlords, or do you think every legion is run by a general?
I think every legion is run by a warlord.
I wouldn't run it that way. I would have the one single warlord. Everyone is a general until one steps up and says, I've been chosen, I am the warlord. And everyone else says, okay, gather the host.
I think when the host is together, those other warlords of the other legions become generals, and they understand that, and thus would call themselves a general. But if that legion was an autonomous thing on its own, he's calling himself a warlord.
I see. That's a very orc thing to me. I will call myself this, but I'm not actually the...
But he has the power of it, right? He could be the warlord that calls together a host. He doesn't know. He's waiting on Maglubiat's blessing.
But I just think that he would be the general waiting to be called up by Maglubiat.
Yeah.
Look, the point is, that's what I'm looking for in here. I need to know what this call is. Why is the host together? We know how. We know kind of roughly how long it takes. We get the idea that everybody's going to come together. They're going to be on the march. We know some basic tactics, right? The idea of a siege. They're going to put up blockades if they can. Standard military tactics. DM, when you're going to play Goblinoid Host, go out and get the Art of War. Right?
Yeah,
Pick that up and really dig into that shit. If you are going to really play with the idea. Fuck, I would do this with the General of Gehenna too. Right? There's another legion militaristic.
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, and you see how involved he is with, actually...
You don't see. It's implied.
With the Barghest, though, right? You saw how involved the general is with the Barghests.
Well, that's just because he's pissed off at Maglubiat.
Yeah, so that would be a really interesting battle, goblins versus Yugoloths.
I just assume that the Yugoloths are just more willing to side with Groomsh.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
let's move to homebrewing with these guys.
All right, so when we're filling in the rank and file for the other ranks and shit.
Yeah. Okay. So what kind of stuff are you doing here?
All right, so with the DMG, we get when you create a NPC, you make a Hobgoblin, which gets 0 ability modifiers.
Yep.
Which is a little bit odd. Most of them have it. I think only the Kuatoa and the Merfolk also don't get ability changes.
Is that just because they're very close to generic human?
I think so. Although, I mean, not for the Kuatoa, but anyway. So Hobgoblin does get they do get the martial advantage.
That's nice.
And the martial advantage is when you increase the effective damage of 1 attack per round by the amount gained from this trait.
Yeah.
What amount? It's different in each one of the stat blocks. Martial advantage is 2d6 for a Hobgoblin. Yeah. It's 3d6 for a Captain, right? So it doesn't give us that. So thanks for that shit. You do get dark vision up to 60 feet, and of course you get Goblin on top of common. Yeah. And that's it for your average NPC. But then when it comes to you looking at how to build a player character, your ability score does increase. Your con goes up by 2 and your int goes up by 1. As you said before, your age is roughly the same. Alignment, society is built around codes and conduct, and they tend towards lawful evil, but you can really do whatever you want. As we've said before, and as Tasha's really tells us, build the character how you want it to be. Your base land speed is 30 feet, I guess, unless you're doing the monk thing or the odd barbarian thing or whatever.
Yep.
And, you still get the 60-foot dark vision. You still get martial training with proficiency with 2 martial weapons of your choice and with light armor.
I love this for mages.
Sure. Yeah, I like that because I'd play a warcaster too.
Yeah, right. Like it gives you a little bit more versatility, which is always nice.
And of course, you're going to get the Goblin language, but you get this thing called Saving Face, which doesn't show up anywhere else in Hobgoblin lore. But apparently, player characters get this. So, because you're not supposed to show weakness in front of anyone else, and because you may lose status. Remember, if you lose status, then you get...
I was about to say, it's heavily implied by the focus on status and reputation within their culture.
Right, but it's not anywhere in the tactics of anything.
No,
it's not
and nowhere does it say, hey, they try not to lose face.
Yeah. So if you miss with an attack roll or you fail with an ability check or a saving throw, you can actually gain a bonus to the roll equal to the number of allies that you can see within 30 feet, which can be a fuck ton.
Yeah.
Except the maximum bonus is 5. Okay, so
thank you for the cap.
Yeah, but you can only do this once for short or long rest.
That's dumb.
So you get this little bonus. If you miss by just a little bit, you can say, no, it works. I don't like that. I don't think it fits thematically. They're not lucky like that. That feels almost halfling-ish to me.
I actually do like it because of just their entire life is focused around the training and combat, and especially in a group setting. It makes a little bit of sense where they just make it work. Like they know that unique follow through where they could do actually make that missed attack, make sure it looks like it hit, right?
I just think that if you're going to have all of this military training and this emphasis on other things like that, then you should be doing things like just give them an unarmored attack as a 1d4 instead of just 1 damage.
But that is so I don't know. I don't like the idea of giving them the unarmored attack. It doesn't track for they don't have claws or tusks or something that would...
No, but they have training. That is my point here, right? Like the Hobgoblins, we put so much emphasis on the military and the training and the way
that
it's
makes
supposed
sense.
to go.
They would be able to actually
throw a fucking punch.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay, Adam. So let's grab our dice. Let's talk plot hooks. Let's give a good plot hook each, and then we'll move on to campaign ideas.
Sure. I rolled a nat 1 this time.
I got an 8. As a plot hook, finding the body of one of these venerated hobgoblins from down the line, and of course it would have on this casket,
one of the dead heroes.
One of the dead heroes. Because the hobgoblins venerate them as objects of not only military prowess, but also the lessons they could learn about the achievements. Any hobgoblin warlord would want to have hands on this guy, right? So having your party come across this sarcophagus and being able to discern what it is and now have to just defend it from hobgoblins or protect it from hobgoblins so that it can be opened from some sort of magical arcane lock to get to this unique information inside that would spoil some tactics that the Hobgoblins have been using, right? This is the kind of plot hook I would want to have with these guys, right? Because they're so regimented and because they're so almost ritualistic with their methods, having them written down, which they say multiple times, getting the players to have that sort of information and then adding the fact that it's a venerated hero of some sort really weakens the Hobgoblins in the area, so they would want to get that back as hard as possible. And it is one of those things where now the party's not going out and getting a thing, which is often what we do with plot hooks.
Yeah.
They're defending a thing.
I like that. I want to, for my plot hook, I'm thinking this is probably like a 4 or 5 session arc within your campaign or something, but the host is amassing. The warlord is on the move.
Yeah.
And your king has a get out of jail free card. There is a document that he has that when he shows it, says, hey, you know what? We fucking backed you 150 years ago. You're going to leave us the fuck alone this time.
Yeah.
But only the warlord will recognize the symbol or like whatever
cool,
the emblem is.
Cool.
So your guys have to get an audience with them. So they are bodyguards for the diplomatic mission. They know what the key phrase is that needs to be said. They know what this symbol looks like, and they have the documentation. And that is when a Leviathan hits the ship as they're going up the coast and wipes out the ship and kills all the diplomats, and your party survives without the document, but you have to get this message in. And now you're behind enemy lines.
Oh, I really like that.
So
that's kind of like a mini campaign arc.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you're going to get 5 or 6 sessions out of this. You have to get in to an audience with the warlord, and the warlord does not have time for visitors or slaves. And if you're behind enemy lines, you must be a slave. So you're going to get a real Frodo behind, like, it going through Mordor or like one of these really paranoid, stealthy kind of feels to it. So
I really like that. That's really badass. Okay, let's grab the dice one more time. Let's talk about like a full level 20 campaign.
Yep.
I got an 8.
I got a 1
We got the
again.
exact same roll again.
Jesus. Okay.
I mean, it's going to be really, really hard not to do a defend against the Goblinoid Host as a level 20 campaign. But I really like this idea of the fact that they're so fanatical, the fact that they're so focused on worship to Maglubiet, and that kind of act is exemplified on this block in the middle of their camp, right?
Yeah.
With this Executioner's Axe. So as a full level 1 to 20 campaign, I want there to be a Goblinoid host that is moving throughout the realm, but they, unbeknownst to them, have Maglubiet's actual axe. They have the artifact weapon Executioner's Axe, right? That is more than happy to keep killing things. But your party will know through several sessions of intrigue that Maglubiet is wanting to move the battle from Acheron onto this realm. And the key to that is going to be his axe. So your party has to go stop this entire host, probably by picking them off tribe by tribe, doing what you need to do.
You're teaming up with orcs on this too.
And even some giants.
Some Yugolos. Like, they're going to be some, like, this
Elves.
host has to be fucking big.
Yeah. And you are doing straight up building an army to take down the army so that you could get in and get this axe. And that's going to be your campaign.
No,
right?
I like that.
Yeah.
I would like to do it from the other point of view. My mini campaign here, and I think I could probably milk this for about level 3 to level 8. So we could have a lot of fun. I could play this for about 5 months. Is my
Yeah,
plan.
okay.
Everybody play a different kind of goblinoid.
Dibs on Hobgoblin. Oh, dibs on Bugbear.
Sure. Everybody gets to play a different kind of goblinoid. And you can use whatever the subclasses or whatever it is that you want. But remember, if you're a magic caster and you're a goblin, then you're a booyog.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're going to sink our fucking teeth into goblinoid hierarchy. And you can start off with maybe like the hobgoblin who hangs out with the goblins just because he's waiting for that raven to show up. Because the last time the raven showed up to Cold War with these motherfuckers, they just didn't even recognize that it was the Raven was doing it. They were down in their mind. And they right. And so you've got, there are a couple of people around. You start off with goblins, and then your goblin tribe has to start to join the host. There's a Nilbog issue. There's a Barghest issue.
Yeah.
There's you start to get, oh, hey, there's a sect of goblins over there that are following some great old one. You've got a couple of iron shadows that just come and watch and do nothing, waiting to see before they're going to make a move against the goblin boss
Yeah.
and shit like that. Like, you can really play with enough different kinds. Hey, you know what we need? Ogres. Go capture some ogres. Level 3 goblins. Right? Like, you could really have some fun putting together a build the host campaign.
I really like that. I kind of got the idea. You mentioned the Nilbog, and it specifically says that the Hobgoblin Warlord puts in a jester to avoid having a Nilbog in the camp, just because Nilbogs are embodiments of chaos.
Yeah.
Right? Which is everything a Hobgoblin does not want.
Exactly.
So as a mini plot hook, the Hobgoblin Warlord, who's sitting there in this state of recomp, right? Like recollecting the whole, like the host is done and they're now regathering, they're rebuilding.
Yeah.
Has hired your party, because he can't spare the troops, has hired your party to go and kill the Nilbog.
It's not even that he can't spare the troops. He's just so fucking done with these goddamn Nilbogs. Just go replace him, take the bard in your party.
Yeah.
And just kill the Nilbog and be fucking outlandish while you do it so that he goes away.
Yeah. Right? Like having the Hobgoblins be the ones who are like just sending your party out to do it.
I like that the capstone encounter in that too would be like, hey, we are under siege by the enemies. Stay alive through this siege, but all of you have to just be as wacky as possible the whole time. If you are not fucking wackier than you've ever been in this entire campaign for, let's say, 4 rounds in a row, I will roll a d4 and decide which one of you will become the Nilbog, and the other 3 will have to fight and kill it.
I really like that.
Right? Like, I would do some sort of fun end cap thing like that as the host gets pushed back. So
cool. Anyways, that is a decent portion of what we could find on 5e on Goblinoids. But we've got lots of other kinds of mobs to cover. Don't forget to come back next week when we finally take a look at kobolds.
I love kobolds. And remember, as Megan said last time when we covered kobolds. And remember what Megan said last time when we covered kobolds. Talk to your kobolds.
Anyways, that's it for this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, you could head over to www.itsamimic.com and hit our fancy donate button. Or tell your friends and the rest of your D&D party about the podcast. We're available on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as many other podcast apps.
Thank you for listening to another It's a Mimic production. Inquiries, shoutouts, requests, and mailbag questions can be sent to info@itsamimic.com.
And now for something particularly deep and personal from our good friend Dave.
Oh, not a burp. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you for listening to an It's a Mimic production.
Okay, you're done. Get it.